Well, good evening, everyone. It is a little bit warm in here. We have got the air conditioning on. If it does get a little bit noisy, we can actually turn it down or turn it off. But have we got it on the low level in a minute? Sorry? Huh? Can you hear it? Is it interfering? Or? There you go. That's better. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to people in the public gallery and people also listening on the web tonight. Are there any apologies?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we've got Councillor Latham, who's away on a charitable mission in Uganda at the moment, and unfortunately Councillor Berry has been diagnosed with swine flu this evening, so he won't be able to attend.
Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, we've got Councillor Lowe, Councillor Beattie and Councillor Mitchell.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. Receive any declarations of interest? None? Councillor Rawson. Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 11, it's personal interest, as I'm an employee of Derby Hospitals Trust, and that's specifically mentioned in the motion.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay. Item 3, to approve the minutes of the annual general meeting of the Council held on the 20th of May 2009. Everybody okay with that? Agreed? Okay, any announcements from the Mayor? There are no announcements. The only one is, if anybody's got a mobile phone, if they can turn it off now, please, even in the public gallery. What I thought I'd start this year, if your phone goes off, you make a contribution to the Mayor's charity. I think, and that includes you, Steve, as well. Biggest corporate. Item 5 is to receive any statements from members of the Council Cabinet. None. Item 6, to receive any questions from the public to members of the Council Cabinet and the answer to those questions. And we have Colin Underhill on the Cathedral Green fence panels. And that's to Councillor Nater.
Evening, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, evening.
Councillor Nater. I would like to ask a question about the Cathedral Green. Is there a plan to use smarter and cleaner fence panels on the Cathedral Green for main events, such as the recent performances of Peer Gynt and Richard III? It was disappointing to see such shoddy equipment being used on such an occasion in such a prestigious area of the city.
Councillor Nater.
Good evening, Mr. Underhill. Thank you. This was the first such use of new Cathedral green space and was a learning curve for all involved. However, it was worth noting that our outdoor theatre season was a resounding success and both productions achieving more than 90% capacity. Critically acclaimed and above all, audiences had a great time.
Can you bring the mic closer to it? Thanks.
Yeah. Derby Live needed to be able to secure the control access to the site of both practical and health and safety reasons. We did try to make the site look attractive as possible, but by the use of the red and white pavilion, matching banners and some lampposts, promotional banners and some Harris fencing. Derby Live introduced the blue fencing around the staging and audience area. After there was quite a lot of activity, interest of it, antisocial behaviour from other users of the green, which would impact on the performance and the customer experience. Even with security measures in place, there was still an incident of theft from the site. If we were to use the site again, we would review the fencing and infrastructure we use. However, a balance needs to be struck so that the cost of infrastructure does not make the event financially unviable.
Have you have a supplementary to that, Mr.
I would still like to just have a clarification of the quality of fencing being used in the future. The example that was on display for the Peer Gynt and Richard III was the same that is around the police station at the present time, and it's just bent and buckled and just is not of any good impression for Derby.
Was there a question now? Okay.
Is there an intention to put new panelling in?
Councillor Nater.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Underhill. I agree with you. The fencing was, below par. But like we said, it was the first event, and we will be looking to have a look how we can improve it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is from Colin Underhill to Councillor Kerr on the Juries Inn road layout.
Question to Councillor Kerr. I contact the council officers in highways, copying in Mr Guest and Mr Foote, with regard to a concern re the highway adjacent to Juries Inn on King Street, Derby. The layout, which had been carried out by a private contractor, put drivers at risk as there was no indication of the changes to the road laning. The response to my query made it quite evident that no one had visited the site and it was not conclusive. How do we get council officers to respond?
Councillor Kerr.
Good evening, Mr Underhill, and I apologise for the difficulty you experienced in getting a sufficient answer to this particular query, and I hope that the information I passed on to you earlier by email was what you needed. In general, an inquiry to either Derby Direct by phone on 293111 or email customerservices@derby.gov.uk should be passed to the correct department and officer for a timely reply. The target is 5 working days for informal complaints and 10 days for formal complaints. If the reply requires particular expertise, there may be a delay due to staff being on holiday or for other reasons not available. In this instance, you should be informed of the reasons for the delay and likely time for a reply. It would be appropriate to contact the relevant Chief Officer to chase a response. In this particular case, you did, as you say, receive a response from officers, although it perhaps did not provide the information you were expecting. I can assure you, though, that council officers are visiting the site you mentioned on a regular basis to check the quality of work and to ensure that they are being undertaken safely.
Do you have a supplementary question, Mr Under? Thank you.
Could I just stress that we need a response back from a query, because we seem to get one response only and then no further progress on a complaint. So we do need a further response.
Would you like to respond to that, Councillor?
I'm not clear why, in this particular instance, the dialogue that you were hoping to have sort of stopped. But I'm sure it's not the intention on the majority of occasions.
Okay, thank you, Mr Underhill. Mr Stephen Bate to Councillor Nater, the protocol for consulting on developments.
As a Chadderton resident, I applaud the Council's proposals to replace the existing library, which is clearly not fit for purpose. I am aware that Council officers have been working towards achieving this objective for some time. I also note information on the Council's website, consulting the public generally about what facilities they want the new library to provide. However, I am concerned that the most fundamental question, where do you want the library to be located, was not part of that process. As a Nottingham Road resident, the first I knew about the proposal was in April of this year, when a handful of residents were presented with a preferred solution of the replacement library being located on the Chadderston Park frontage of Nottingham Road, and were told that a planning application would be submitted imminently. I have subsequently been informed by council officers that it is normal council procedure to use the planning application process as the only external consultation process for a proposed council development scheme. It is my view that such a system is fraught with prejudice, as the planning application must only be considered on its own merits and cannot consider the merits of other potential sites. This is particularly pertinent in the instance of the replacement Chadderston Library, where there appear to be many better alternative locations, including the reuse of the existing site. Can the Cabinet member please confirm what is the Council's agreed protocol for consulting with residents affected by the development of its own schemes, and whether this protocol was followed in this particular instance?
Councillor Nater.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I seem to have the questions mixed up. Seem to have received the wrong response. Sorry, yes, I've got the right one. Apologies there, Mr. Bate. Local planning authorities are legally required to produce a statement of community involvement, setting out their mechanisms and enabling communities to be involved in the planning process. Derby City Council's statement of community involvement sets out the kind of consultation it carries out on planning applications once they have been received. As the proposal is not yet the subject of a planning application, there is no formal protocol in the statement of community involvement for consultation with local residents at this stage. The statement of community involvement does, however, encourage those proposing significant developments to carry out consultation with the community prior to any application being made, although this is not compulsory. Under normal circumstances, the building of new neighbourhood library would be a large or controversial enough to regard as significant in case of location of the new Chaddiston Library. It's considered desirable. As a matter of courtesy to consult with immediate neighbours of the proposed development, this meeting took place on Wednesday, 8th of April. Officers have already described the proposed location of the new library on the edge of the park, fronting Nottingham Road, at the earlier meeting of the Neighbourhood Forum. Following concerns expressed on the 8th of April, councillors, officers attended a follow-up meeting called by members of the community, as well as subsequent forum meetings. Thank you.
Okay, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you. Would the Cabinet member agree that a formal protocol therefore needs to be put in place, which is understood by all officers and members, and which would allow for proper prior external consultation to be carried out on Council proposed development, which would avoid the situation we are now in with Chaddiston Library, where a proper debate should have been held at the relevant time, before a preferred location had been identified, which would enable the Council to work with local residents, rather than engendering substantial opposition to the proposed location, and therefore avoiding wasting resources by council officers in promoting a flawed scheme.
Councillor Nato.
Right, thank you, Mr. Bate. I'm sorry for mixing up the questions. We've got the wrong ones. I quite agree with you, and we're looking into the process. And what we can do is have a look and come down with the appropriate sort of system in place, and having a look at it with officers and get back to you on that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Tony Dunn, please. It's a question to Councillor Kerr about the new bus station capacity. Mr. Dunn.
Good evening, Councillor Kerr, Councillors, Mr. Mayor. Despite being constantly warned over the years by not only members of the public but also a significant number of prominent bodies that the proposed bus station was not going to be large enough, it would seem that the City Council, although late, has finally woken up and accepted this fact, as it is now echoed in the next local plan, which I will brief for. Having seen the state of traffic around the Moorledge after years of upheaval and promises, could somebody explain immediately how Derby City Council intend to deal with this, which can only be described as an ongoing, scandalous situation?
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. I'm unclear about your reference to the next local transport plan, as this is currently at such an early stage of production that there is nothing yet to see, as it's not due to be produced in 2011. However, the new bus station will provide 24 bus bays, plus a number of coach and layover bays. Clearly, scenarios with more higher frequency or additional bus services can be conceived where more bays could be needed. However, it is recognised that bus operators do not always choose to run all their services to a bus station due to time and route constraints, and a decision had to be taken on size based on reasonable predictions and cost. The proposed bus station should be a facility that will accommodate all bus services that need to use a bus station in order to meet their operational needs both now and in years to come. This is in line with the Council's transport strategy, which seeks to enhance the quality of bus services by working in partnership with bus companies on an integrated programme of improvements to all aspects of bus service provision.
Thank you. Supplementary, Mr. Dunn?
Yeah, I do. Councillor Kerr again, please, Mr. Mayor. and that is, would you like a copy of your document that belongs to that the local plan was considered from, Councillor, which states clearly that concerns of the level of departure changes and concerns how the new bus station will operate, particularly with regards to level of departures and changes in the capacity of the site, and that's your advice.
Councillor Kerr.
I'm still not clear, Mr Dunn, which document is, but maybe having a sight of it, I'll be able to identify what it actually is.
Perhaps you could pass that back to Councillor Kerr. Mr Dunn, can I have your next question then, please? Your next question is to Councillor Kerr again.
Yeah, Councillor Kerr, again, it's the bus station, I'm afraid. We're continually hearing rumours that Derby City Council is struggling to reach agreement with the local bus companies over the figure to charge per passenger, again as stated, for proposed use of the new bus station. Could you please state roughly what that figure will be, and should agreement not be reached with the operators, would the member agree with me that this will render the new station a dead duck from the start?
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. The Council is still negotiating with the developer regarding standards, with the developer, not the bus companies, regarding standards for the internal finish for the bus station, which will help to determine what levels of cleaning and maintenance are required. This in turn will help determine the running costs for the bus station. The level of departure charges for bus services will take account of these costs and will be set to reflect the need to maintain the bus station to a high standard. Typically, departure charges for other bus stations are under £1 per departure, and Derby would expect to be in the same order. This is being discussed regularly with local bus companies, and we are confident that an acceptable balance between cost and quality will be found, ensuring that the bus station will not be a dead duck.
Supplementary, Mr Dunn?
Yeah, just a quick one. Councillor Kerr, I presume that is per bus, is it? Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Dunn. Next question is from Mr Mike Cook to Councillor Nater on the Chaddeston Library consultation. Mr Cook.
Good evening, Councillor Nater. I represent a significant number of Chaddeston residents who are extremely pleased to hear that Derby City Council has provided the funds for the building of a new library to replace the existing dilapidated building. However, many were disappointed to hear at a meeting in April that the new library was not to be built on the existing site within Chaddeston Park, but on your preferred site adjoining Nottingham Road. You attended a public meeting in May along with approximately 150 residents. At this meeting, concerns over the Nottingham Road site were expressed, including spoiling of the open and attractive aspect of the entrance to the park, felling of a number of trees, interference with wildlife and insufficient parking that would increase the traffic problems on Nottingham Road. The existing site presented none of these problems. A vote was taken revealing an overwhelming majority in favour of building the library on the existing site. Then at the Neighbourhood Forum meeting in June, which you attended, it was announced that consultation was to be carried out at a cost to the taxpayer by a professional body. This would involve just 10% of local residents. It was also stated that consultation would not ask for views or offer options on the location of the new library, and therefore only to make comment on the Council's chosen site on Nottingham Road. The residents at the meeting were appalled by this, despite a large number of them expressing a preference for a location not to be covered by the consultation. Councillor Nater, I would ask if it is still the case that the consultation will only ask for opinions on your preferred Nottingham Road location, and why you believe that a survey covering just 10% of the residents will have any legitimacy given the significant support for an alternative site.
Councillor Nater.
Good evening, Mr Cook, and thank you. Opposition to the proposed location for the new Chaddeston Library has been voiced at recent meetings of the Neighbourhood Forum and other public meetings. The Council wishes to determine to what extent the views expressed at these meetings are representative of Chaddeston Ward residents as a whole, and it is therefore commissioning a professional market research organisation to carry out an objective survey on its behalf. We believe that the proposed site on Nottingham Road is the only location in the park that we can recommend for a new library. Therefore, the survey will not actively canvass views on other locations on the park, including the present site. Respondents will be asked if they support the Council's proposed location of the library. If they do not support the proposal, then they will be invited to say why not, and asked if there are any alternative suggestions. The Council will consider these comments and suggestions carefully, as well as the overall level of support for its proposed location on Nottingham Road. Before proceeding further with plans for the new library, the survey will take the form of face-to-face interviews with a sample of 1,000 residents of Chaddesden Ward, 10% of the adult population. A probably constructed sample survey makes it possible to draw generalised conclusions about the views of the whole population. We have considered the possibility of extending the survey to everyone in the ward, but have rejected this on grounds of cost. The sample size of 1,000 has been selected in line with standard statistical methodology. The sample is enough for its 95% certain that any given result is accurate to within plus or minus 3%. For example, if the survey of a sample of 1,000 Chaddesden residents show that 76% are opposed to the proposed location on Nottingham Road, we can be 95% certain that 73 and 79% of all residents are opposed. Statistically, it is based on sound scientific principles, and we are fully confident of the legitimacy of the surveys conducted according to these recognised industry standards.
Thank you. Did I have a supplementary, Mr. Cook?
I believe my friends in the gallery will be very disappointed with that repeat of my statement. But I propose to circulate all residents of Chaddesden with a survey at no cost to the taxpayers, giving them the opportunity to vote for either of the two sites. Will you support this survey and accept the result to be the view of the residents of Chaddesden? And will you assist in scrutinising the account of these votes?
Councillor Nater.
Mr. Cook, it's difficult for that to happen because I think we need to have a look at the proposals. We've been in consultation with the residents at the forums, as you mentioned, that I've been present, and I've looked at the views and listened to people, and I've been in communication with them. And I think in order for it to have a wider impact, we need to sort of take on board this survey. So at the moment I cannot endorse the survey that you aim to conduct, but the one that the Council aims to do at present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Next question is Lorraine Radford to Councillor Kerr on the Kedleston Road bus lanes. Sorry, is it Miss Radford? Miss Radford.
Thank you. Could the Cabinet member please detail the Liberal Democrats' administration policy that relates to its decision to press ahead with the bus lanes planned on Kedleston Road, and what actions were and are being taken to properly consult, assess and review the impact on local residents, businesses, pedestrians, road users and the overall safety of the scheme?
Councillor Kerr, and somebody's just made a donation to the Mayor's charity over there. Sorry, Mr. Radford. Councillor Kerr.
Good evening, Mr. Radford. Extensive consultation was carried out with 10,000 residents during 2006 about possible bus lanes for both Duffield Road and Kedleston Road. This enabled the Council to develop schemes to address bus reliability along these routes. As people know, the Duffield Road scheme was implemented first, and an amended Kedleston Road scheme was approved by the Labour Conservative Cabinet in March 2008. Improving bus services was one of the Liberal Democrat priorities at the last election, so progressing transport improvements on Kedleston Road, including a new Pelican Crossing, were included within the 2009-10 Highways and Transport Work Programme that was approved by Cabinet in March this year. Information has been provided to local businesses and meetings held with some of them to explain the differences between the current proposals and the ones put forward in 2006. During June this year, we held 2 exhibitions to gauge views from all road users and local people. These were originally to be information-only exhibitions, but I said that people's comments should still be taken into consideration. The results of this further consultation will be presented to Cabinet on the 1st of September 2009.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes. Do you concede that many local people just do not want the bus lanes on Kedleston Road and think the road is just not wide enough? Cyclists think the proposals are dangerous. Businesses are genuinely concerned over the loss of trade. Pedestrians will have to walk closer to passing traffic, and vehicles are forced into using extremely narrow lanes, similar to what we've got on Duffield Road. Please, could you tell me why, once again, you are planning to move ahead with a scheme that is just not supported by the local residents?
Councillor Kerr, just turn your mic off, please.
I would accept some of the concerns that you've noted there from the original scheme from 2006, but there have been significant changes, and the areas where it's particularly narrow and where it would impact on the businesses due to loss of incidental parking have been changed. And I think that what we've ended up with is a scheme which will have maximise the areas of benefit while minimising the impact on other road users in an adverse manner.
Thank you for that. Next question is Penny de Abreu to Councillor Kerr on the Seven Stars car park.
Good evening. With regard to the new Seven Stars car park, King Street, a main historic route, I would like to know whether the design, materials and method of construction are the new standards by which Derby City Council now aspires in its treatment of similar sensitive buildings and significant areas of interest. Can we be assured that it will now be the blueprint by which future planning applications will be judged?
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Ms Abreu. The new Seven Stars car park was approved according to standard council procedures, with details such as boundary walls and railings being part of the list of conditions attached to the planning application's approval for this phase of connecting Derby. The details of design, construction and materials of the boundary walls were agreed by council officers with consultation with the built environment team. They provided advice on appropriate design and materials, and this was taken into consideration along with practicalities of overall costs of the scheme and the setting of nearby listed buildings. The effect of the car park on the setting of listed buildings and the character of the adjacent conservation area was considered to be acceptable by the Council's Conservation Area Advisory Committee, as well as its Planning Control Committee, Planning Inspector and the Secretary of State. In general, every development is considered on its own merits and based on context and setting. Materials and details of construction are therefore determined specifically to fit in with the nature of each proposal.
Thank you. You have a supplementary?
Yes. So your answer is that the standard is low. Why has Derby City Council set such a low level? Why is that being allowed?
Councillor Kerr.
When I last went past the route, it was the construction was still not complete, and I think it's difficult to judge what the final effect will be when there is only a partial completion there to see. And I wouldn't like to make a judgment about that complete standard until we've actually got the full picture available to us.
Okay, thank you. Your next question is to Councillor Troop on noise pollution.
On Saturday, the 4th of July, the air was thick with noise pollution, a cacophony of noise that arose from the city centre. It was absolutely appalling in town and certainly could be heard clearly in Arthur Street, where I live. So much so, it forced us to get out to try to escape it. Are there any restrictions on the amount of noise allowed?
Councillor Troop.
Thank you for the question, Mr Brew. No, there are no restrictions on the amount of noise allowed. The Council can deal with noise from individual premises if it considers that it constitutes a statutory nuisance. This term, statutory nuisance, is legally defined in the Environmental Protection Act 1990. If necessary, the Council will investigate whether or not a statutory nuisance exists. This involves obtaining information from complainants and carrying out observations. Under this piece of legislation, it is also possible for individuals to take their own private action directly to the magistrates' courts.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Given that do you concede then that noise that can also be heard from Alistair, and given that the noise from the marketplace also disrupted the proceedings of the Wilson Street Village Green public inquiry held in the Darwin Suite, is undoubtedly a public noise, and does the Council intend to initiate a review of the entertainment licence so that an addition of a condition restricting the volume of noise be added?
Councillor Troop.
Any complaints of noise, if they're made to the department, they will be investigated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the public questions. Well, the next item, to receive any written questions about the business functions of the Derbyshire Police Authority or the Derbyshire Fire Authority. There are no questions. To receive any written questions from non-council cabinet members to members of the council cabinet and the answer to those questions. There's one or two, I think. Yeah, the first question is from Councillor Bayliss to Councillor Kerr on the Elvaston District Centre. Councillor Bayliss.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening. Good evening, Councillor Kerr. Could the Cabinet Member give an update on Elvaston District Centre improvements? When will phases 2, 3 and 4 start? Could you give me and the residents of Elvaston the start dates for each of these 3 phases?
Okay.
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. Good evening, Councillor Bayliss. I would love to give you and the residents of Elvaston the dates for the start of further stages of work to improve the public realm in Elvaston District Centre. These works are required to bring the area up to a good standard for the 21st century, and similar works are needed in many other of the city's district shopping areas. Unfortunately, though, the Council's current policy for investment is concentrated on the middle of Derby, creating a 21st century city centre, as supported by Labour and Conservatives last summer. As this project is addressing needs elsewhere, not the Council's priority, this has made it more difficult to access funds through external bidding and the like to progress this work. I have been arguing that funding from the Growth Point bid should be spent nearer to where new housing is likely to be built, such as Bolton Moor, rather than only in the city centre, where it has funded Cathedral Green, and this has taken a similar sized budget as the Elvaston district will require. I am optimistic that some funding will be released for Elvaston, and if so, the next phase may be able to begin later this year, subject to the necessary work programming requirements. Future funding will be considered as part of the development of next year's and future years' work programmes, continuing to be dependent on what the corporate priorities are.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary to that?
Of course, Mr Mayor. Would you not agree that your inability to answer the question again demonstrates that Elvaston Bolton Ward residents are being let down the Liberal Democrats? You've made promises to them in the election literature, now failing to deliver on. Waffling simply will not do. If Elvaston had been incorporated in the Highways programme, funded from the council resources, phase 2 could be started this financial year. Why can't we do that now?
Councillor Kerr.
If last summer we had priorities that supported the development of the whole of the city and not just the city centre, we would be making more progress now, I am sure. Okay, the next question, Councillor Bayliss again to Councillor Carr on the counter-service opening hours.
Good evening,
Councillor Bayliss.
Good evening, Councillor Carr. Despite previous assurances and debates in this chamber, how do you justify further cuts in service at the cash counters, with the opening times being cut from the 1st of August? A couple of my constituents have fixed work and lunch hours. That means they will not be able to use the counter service after 31st of July as they can now. will you reverse this service cut in opening hours and not close the counters before 4 p.m?
Councillor Carr. Thank you, Councillor. You have a supplementary to that, Councillor Bayliss?
A woeful answer, Mr Mayor, and one that will not placate my constituents. Is this not the usual Lib Dem strategy? If you're not in Lib Dem world, you get your services cut or your projects delayed, as we witnessed with the Chadstone Library, across the city with CCTV, in an Ulverston where we've got a quarter finished, a district centre. Would you like to apologise for your shocking sleight of hand and duplicity?
Councillor Cole. Madam Mayor, that's a Mayor's charity donation again. I'm going to earn some money tonight, you know. Go ahead. Okay, thank you. I'd just like to say, if people want to take the jackets off, it is getting quite warm in here, so feel free to, you know, take your jackets off. Okay, where were we? Councillor Graves to Councillor Nater, the Ulverston Park development. Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It has been several years since the Council planned to develop Ulverston Park, and it's been the same number of years that football and cricket has been absent from our neighbourhood. I have consistently asked for this to be moved on for the benefit of the residents, the football community, the cricket community and visitors. When can we expect replacement changing rooms and the new improved building? When can we expect new football pitches and a new cricket pitch?
Councillor Nater.
Good evening, Councillor Graves. I'm sorry, I keep on looking over to the right-hand side, but I understand that the Labour group's getting lighter by the day. Right.
Can you just answer the question, Councillor Nater? Sorry, just answer the question.
The proposed draft timetable, the pavilion for the Ulverston Park is as follows. The architects appointed in July. That's been done. Production information, detailed plans, specifications and tender documents, July to October 2009. Out to tender, November 2009. Tender return, January 2010. Start on site, March 2010. Completion, August 2010. This is a tight timetable, but an achievable one, provided there are no unforeseen hold-ups. If the application funding for the Football Foundation is unsuccessful, the racecourse pavilion will not proceed. But the Ulverston Park Pavilion can still go ahead, subject to Derby City Council capital funding currently allocated to the Racecourse Pavilion being reallocated to the Alveston Park Pavilion. The football pitches will be marked out for the start of the 2010 football season. Parks officers are currently talking to specialist firm about the time required and the processes of constructing and bedding in a new cricket wicket prior to its use for cricket matches. They are anticipating that the new wicket will be ready for 2011 cricket season, but will confirm this shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. You have the supplementary?
Of course, Mr Mayor, absolutely. Perhaps it would have been helpful then, Councillor Nater, if you'd have informed the Alveston Ward councillors of this progress, if indeed it is called progress. Can you inform the council when the Football Foundation bid will be decided?
Councillor Nater.
Sorry. Yes, we're just looking at that. We had a meeting with the Football Foundation and the FA people, Councillor Graves, and as you know, I'm committed to sport, and it's never been in the previous administration sites. We're looking at the funding application. I think it's been we're looking at it before the end of the year. I can't be quite certain when, but what I will do is get back to you on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, Councillor Hussain to Councillor Jones, reduction in Community Safety Partnership budget. Councillor Hussain.
Community safety officers have played a vital role in the neighbourhood teams by making a major contribution towards making our communities safer and by reducing crime and fear of crime. Their work appears to have borne the brunt of reduction in the Community Safety Partnership budget. They no longer have the ability to make small spends on measures that are designed to reduce opportunistic crime. Why have you misjudged the impact of this reduction? This reduction was always likely to have on local communities and neighbourhood teams. And what can you do to make amends to your short-sighted decision?
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The community safety officers continue to play a vital role in the neighbourhood teams across the city for our communities by reducing crime as a priority. A fundamental review was undertaken to assess the delivery of antisocial behaviour by community safety officers. This resulted in it remaining a key priority. This is intended to improve and increase the service provided to all neighbourhoods. We have 7 community safety officers for the 17 wards. The principle of these new arrangements is that we are able to be flexible and dynamic in our response to the issues as they arise. The new structure does not mean a loss of focus on individual neighbourhoods. We are committed to giving the best possible community safety service to our residents, neighbourhoods and councillors. And we will be reviewing participation and representation as we move forward. The Council has not reduced their investment in the Community Safety Partnerships Neighbourhood Service for community safety officers. Funds for activities is less than last year as a result of reduced income from the Labour Department for Communities and Local Government.
Councillor Hussain, do you have a supplementary?
The impact of the reduction is that the practical steps which community safety officers were able to take fairly quickly are no longer being taken. And this is leading to delays to any residence inquiry, and it's undermining the whole concept of neighbourhood working. This needs to be put right fairly quickly, and I'm urging the council leader to reverse these cuts. And I'm asking her when she could, how long will it be before she could reverse it?
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr
Can
Mayor.
you turn your mic off?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have to repeat what I said in my answer. There have been no cuts. In fact, this council can be proud of the amount of money that we do put into neighbourhood working. Got figures in front of me. It's 2.340 million. That's quite a lot of money going into the neighbourhoods. There are no cuts, I repeat, no cuts to community safety working.
Okay, thank you. Next question is Councillor Jackson to Councillor Nater on the rebuilding of Gayton Pool. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Nater, I'll read it slowly so you've got time to find the answer. Will Councillor Nater confirm that approval has been given for the rebuilding of the Gayton swimming pool at a cost of well over £1 million if you include the legal fees, in the knowledge that this will only benefit a handful of schools and residents in the Blackreeves Ward area? Does Councillor Nater remember how the Liberal Democrats vociferously supported the rebuilding of the pool? Will Councillor Nater confirm that the budget, which was agreed by the Liberal Democrats and Conservatives last March, slashed £100,000 off the funding for the Derby Live budget during its first year of operation, along with other cuts in culture and leisure? Whichever budget the finance for the rebuilding of the pool comes from, it will be out of council taxpayers' money. In the current financial circumstances, does Councillor Nater think the £1 million plus for the rebuilding of the Gayton swimming pool is good value for money?
Councillor Nater.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I suggest that you read the banner up there first. Anyway, getting back to your response, the decision to close and demolish the Gayton pool was taken in July 2007 by the Labour-led administration. The substantial legal costs which refers to were a direct result of the decision being successfully challenged by the Community Association in the courts. The court ruling finally delivered in July 2008 meant the council were legally obliged to put the pool back into good repair. The estimated cost of this, as reported to Cabinet on 15th of October 2008, was approximately £750,000. We were told that a major refurbishment renewal would be required for the life of the new pool. Other options were therefore considered, including a completely new pool building. The cost of this was estimated at £1 million, and it was considered to be the most appropriate and value for money solution. This was accepted by Council on Cabinet on 28th of October 2008, after considering the views of Scrutiny Management Commission. Planning permission for the pool was granted on 29th of June 2009, and the detailed design is almost complete. It's approximately a year's time it will be finished and open to the public. We expect that it will once again serve an important venue for teaching children and adults to swim, but also that it will be a much enhanced facility. It will prove to be a popular attraction of the community at large and contribute keeping them healthy. The issue of Derby Live funding in the context is complete red herring. It is funded from revenue. The pool is capital funded. In conclusion, I consider the new pool is value for money in the view of the court's decision. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson, you have a supplementary?
And Councillor Nater, I don't come here to read banners, I come here to hear what you say as the Cabinet member. I'm sure that every councillor fights hard for their ward, and Councillor Banwaite, and I fight hard for our ward. But you are the Cabinet member for culture and leisure throughout the whole city, and you should see that everyone benefits from the funds available. Would you make the same decision again, given the chance, and channel the £1 million towards Blackreeves Ward at the expense of art and culture throughout the city? And I did say, whichever budget the finance comes from, it will come out of the council taxpayers' money. So somebody hasn't briefed you properly on my question.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Councillor Nater.
Just so eager to respond, given the Cabinet member decision. Very important sports to me, and yes, I do believe that the city should have an enhanced sort of programme on sports, which I'll be coming to Council for the support of all Council, that when we get our reports and study back. And one thing I will do, Councillor Jackson, is you're the shadow Cabinet member for Leisure and Culture. I'll be coming to you first for your support. Perhaps not.
Okay, thank you. Next question is Councillor Ingle to Councillor Carr on the Chellaston Curbside Collection Scheme. Councillor Ingle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for this opportunity to speak. I won't keep you all long this evening. Would the Cabinet member please give details of the areas of Chellaston Ward that are currently not part of its curbside recycling scheme even, and explain the reasons for the significant delays that are being experienced and offer a formal schedule of implementation? Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, can I actually have an answer to the question as opposed to telling us anything else?
Oh, is it working? Do you want to use the next one over, Mike?
Oh, it's changed my name, Mayor.
Okay, do you want to continue?
It's got you up now. The streets that are not currently included in the Recycle for Derby scheme in Chellaston Ward are listed in the appendix, which is part of the answer to your question. I'm not going to read them out, but I will pass you the appendix later. It is expected that these streets will be added to the scheme by December of this year. There are streets across the city that are not on the Recycle for Derby scheme, and to include them requires significant work, as it requires reviewing the waste and recycling collections for all 110,000 properties. Any delays to implementation have been because of the need to ensure such changes have minimal impact to the residents of the city, and that the right balance of workload has been allocated to ensure maximum operational efficiency benefits. I hope to present draft proposals in September or October of this year. A formal schedule of implementation will be available at that time, and this will be issued to all members of the Council. Sorry.
Thank you. Is there a supplementary to that, Councillor Engel?
Would you be surprised to hear yes, Mr Mayor?
You do surprise me.
Thank you for that full answer there. I didn't think we were going to get there when you started. However, so as I remember last time we were here 2 months ago, you told us this would be rolled out in September. We're now looking at December, that's fine. I hope there will be no slippage from that, and we will be here to hold you to account over that. Thank you very much indeed, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I don't think that was a supplementary, but thank you for that anyway. So, next question is Councillor Bolton to Councillor Allen on Cabinet decision on school transport. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question to Councillor Allen, the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People. In your opinion, are you convinced that the Cabinet took the correct decision on the school transport issue last week? I understand you were not present at the meeting, so could not take part in the debate to speak on behalf of the hundreds of Derby school children, along with their parents and carers, who are devastated by this action. Furthermore, are you satisfied with the consultation process that took place?
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, as Council is aware, the current financial situation facing the Council has led and will continue to lead to some difficult decisions. The proposal was only to remove the transport provision for pupils living under the statutory walking distance, 2 or 3 miles depending on age, from their nearest appropriate school. The vast majority of pupils who live a similar distance from school do not currently receive any assistance with transport in line with the Labour Government's legislative requirements, and there is no strong argument for a small proportion of the school population receiving special treatment. The removal of this discretionary transport element means equity for all pupils, including those who attend faith and non-faith schools, and is wholly in line with current government guidance. In response to the continuing budgetary issues faced by the Council, you will recall in 2007, Councillor Bolton, when you were in administration, that you introduced the charges for transport to faith schools alongside increased charges for other discretionary school transport. That decision affected a much larger number of pupils living beyond the statutory distances and attending faith schools, mostly from the larger areas that they serve. This latest decision only impacts upon the small number of pupils living within the statutory walking distance from school and who are currently receiving transport assistance. In reality, the offer from the Notts and Derby Bus Company now means that the majority of these same pupils will continue to have access to buses and will be able to pay on a daily basis. With regard to the consultation process, I am satisfied that the formal process was carried out appropriately. I understand, however, that there was regret expressed at the recent Cabinet meeting that discussions with the schools concerned had not taken place at an earlier stage. I would agree with that sentiment and trust that we can learn from this experience. In the circumstances, though, Mr Mayor, I do support the decision taken.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Bolton?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, it is very disappointing that the Cabinet Member takes that point of view, because on Monday, the 22nd of June, when the Joint Overview and Scrutiny Commissions, Mr Mayor, held a witness gathering statement event, of which we had various head teachers, we had the unions, we had governors, we had the petitioners, we had young people themselves who will be affected by this project, and obviously parents and carers. And Councillor Allen should have been attending at that meeting.
Councillor Bolton,
we didn't have
you need to get to a supplementary question, really.
I would like to ask Councillor Allen what was more important to him on that evening as to not attend on Monday the 22nd of June. I would like him to share where he was on that evening and why he didn't attend the Commission.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I can't offhand say what my diary had on that occasion, but I will consult my diary and pass that information. There is also the question, Mr Mayor, that, well, if you say that, Councillor Repton, I'll believe you. I have no reason to disbelieve you.
Can we have some order, please? Thank you. Councillor Repton, please.
Mr Mayor, I did speak the truth. I said I couldn't remember where I was and I would consult my diary. That's not a lie, that's the truth. If Councillor Repton has better information, then fine, I'll accept it. Now, to respond to the question, when meetings are put into schedules after the published schedule and commitments are given, then a decision has to be made, and the decision generally is that the first commitment accepted is the one that stands. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
He was at a garden party at Pickford's house instead of doing his duty as a Cabinet Member.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton, for that. Next question is Councillor Graves to Councillor Wood on the Derby City Gate duty to be heard by the Planning Control Committee. Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening, Councillor Wood. I see that the planning officers, with your agreement, have decided to consider the Citygate scandal on the 30th of July, unfortunately when I'm away. You will be aware that I asked for a minor deferment in order that I could attend. These requests were given on the 25th of June and again on the 28th of June to you. I also know that the same request came from local residents, which have been ignored. You'll be aware that I have had no response from you, and I received an email from Paul Clark on the 13th of July explaining why you feel this was not important. I appreciate that I can make a written submission and that this will be forwarded to the Planning Committee members. Bearing in mind that the original application was received in 2007 and the reason given for not deferring is, and I quote, just too far away, do you think the decision is justified?
Thank you, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good evening, Councillor Graves. And I'd preface my remark by offering an unreserved apology to you if I have in any way inadvertently become guilty of a discourtesy which has caused you any offence. We all know that the Citygate affair has been a very sensitive issue and one which we have done our very best to be even-handed, open and accountable and inclusive. We did make a commitment at the outset that we would get back to committee just as soon as possible with the outcome of the re-advertising of the Citygate applications. And that is why we're heading for the Planning Committee on the 30th of July. If we do not go to the 30th of July meeting, we will then hit the summer holiday period, and the matter will not be considered until the next Planning Control Committee on the 3rd of September. It is my view that the whole Citygate affair would be left hanging in the air for far too long, giving continued uncertainty. In my view, this is too long a wait, given the urgency with which we have handled the matter. You will know that speakers at Planning Control Committee do not get involved in the discussion, and whilst I can appreciate that you would like to be there to deliver your views in person and to hear the debate, you do have the opportunity to have a statement read out. This will give the committee the same information that you would have done had you been there in person. I also understand that Councillor Paul Bayliss, as another ward councillor for Alveston, will also be at the committee. I would hope, therefore, that Councillor Bayliss will be able to handle the matter on behalf of residents and help with reporting back. I'm sorry you cannot be at Planning Control Committee on the 30th of July, but can assure you that the matter will have a full and open debate, and I am confident that members will reach the right conclusion, and I wish you a very enjoyable holiday.
Councillor Grace, quiet please. Councillor Grace, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I think I do. First of all, Councillor Wood, thank you for the apology. It is very much appreciated. However, your statement did say that, it has been an open process. I have a feeling that the residents in that area don't feel that it's been an open process and that the permission was granted behind closed doors. In your opinion, do you think that any objections are now fruitless? Is it worth my constituents turning up to the meeting?
Very much worth them turning up.
Councillor Wood.
Very much
Wood.
well worth them turning up, Councillor Graves. We try to be as open as possible. I still have a very open mind on the situation. The committee has not considered it yet. It was a delegated decision, as you know. Perhaps if ward members had looked at their pink lists the week before and realised what was happening, it might have been a different situation. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. The next is Councillor Holmes to Councillor Allen on recorded measurements between residential properties and schools. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Would the Cabinet Member please specify the procedure that the City Council follows to accurately measure the distance from a residential property to a school when confirming the criteria for a child to receive a free bus pass? And what steps are taken to verify discrepancies between new and previously recorded measurements that result in a child being refused free travel?
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Since the extended rights to free transport were introduced by the Government in September 2007 for primary age pupils and September 2008 for secondary age pupils, every parent has to apply each year due to the potentially changing situation regarding free school meals or the maximum level of working tax credit, which form the criteria for the free provision. When an application is received, the walking route is assessed using the Ordnance Survey map for Derby City. This route is then checked against the latest information on the internet, such as Google Earth. This checking process allows new footpaths, cycle paths and pedestrian crossings to be used, and also highlights any road layout changes that could increase or decrease the walking distance. The Walk It Derby website is also used to check new routes, but as this site cannot pinpoint individual addresses, it is only used to check for other available routes in the area. Should the final measurement be within 10% of the statutory walking distance, the applicants are given the opportunity to walk the route with a council official whilst it is measured with a calibrated trundle wheel. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Holmes, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to ask the Cabinet Member to use this opportunity to pledge that any child entitled to a free bus pass under previous calculation methods, but not after more recent recalculation, will still be offered a bus pass until they leave their school or move home. Would you agree to making that concession tonight?
Councillor Allen.
Sorry, I won't agree to that tonight. What I will agree to is asking officers to look into that situation, and where there is a recalculation, a change in distance, then I think we apply the regulation. If there is no change in distance, then the free travel carries on. But if you have specific instances in mind, and I think you perhaps do, then let us know what they are. We'll remeasure them, have a look at the situation, and see if we've got any discretion we can exercise.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Turner to Councillor Troop, proposed Russell Street travel site. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. It has been suggested that Derby City Council is considering leaving open, or wants to leave open, the possibility of extending the area of land allocated to the proposed traveller site at Russell Street in the Osmaston area of Sinfin Ward. Is that the case?
Councillor Troop.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Turner. The Russell Street site will only be used to accommodate those families residing in the unauthorised Glossop Street encampment. It will not be extended to accommodate additional families. The Council has no intention at this stage of extending the Russell Street site and anticipates that the site will be large enough to accommodate all the travellers at Glossop Street. The detailed design work relating to the Russell Street site is, however, currently undergoing, and it is possible that as a result of this work that we consider that a better scheme can be achieved through a modest extension of the site area. If that were the case, we would explain to local residents why we felt an extension was necessary, and an application would need to be submitted to and considered by the Planning Committee. Let me reiterate, however, that at this stage the Council has no intention of extending the proposed Russell Street site.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Turner?
Yes, certainly. Thank you. That reply, Mr. Mayor, does indicate that they are considering it. I did not ask whether they had an intention. I was asking whether they were considering it or wanted to leave it open, that, in other words, to not allocate the land to any other specific purpose. So, despite that rhetoric, please answer this one. Will you give a solemn undertaking to the people of the area that you will oppose, and the Council Cabinet will oppose, any possibility of the area of land being so increased on any part of the land within Sinfin Ward?
Councillor Troop.
Our intention is for the Russell Street site to be a successful one, and that needs to be successful for both the travellers and for the local community, and we will take into account what measures we need to take to make that the case.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Councillor Harwood to Councillor Kerr on the highways contract. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Kerr, the Liberal Democrats inherited a lot of problems from the previous regime, one being the contract regarding highways. What progress have we made with this contract during the past year, and do you feel that the present contractors can fulfil the contract?
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you.
Madam Mayor.
I've done it as well.
Charity box. Charity box.
I'll find the purse later. My apologies, Sean.
Continue.
You will all no doubt be aware that poor performance of the highways maintenance contract was first being aired around 8 months after it had been agreed by Labour. This was just after the Lib Dems. This was just after the Lib Dems.
Go on, let her finish the question.
This was just after the Lib Dems had taken over leadership of the Council. As a result of this concern, I made visits and asked questions about the way in which the process from inspection to the completion of work was being done, and my observations into this process were included in the production of a detailed improvement plan to address these and other areas requiring attention. This plan is now well down the stages of being delivered. The new contract with Carillion is innovatory in many ways. However, much background work has been needed to be included within the improvement plan to strengthen the partnership approach encompassed in this contract between the Council and Carillion. Some benefits have already emerged in how the contract works, but the full benefit of this continuing work will take further time to give the full expected rewards. However, progress has and is being made in a number of areas. The partner contractor, Carillion, has brought in a number of new people to improve both the contract management and works on site. Some people have been removed from the contract where performance and productivity were unsatisfactory. These actions have greatly improved the situation compared to that left by the previous contractor and I inherited, although it will take further time for the full benefit of these changes to bear fruit. Working methods have been reviewed to increase productivity of some site operations, especially on routine road and footway repair. While these changes have bedded in, the methods of highway inspection and routine repair have temporarily been revised. This has led to more temporary patching being done than normal and some accompanying dissatisfaction from road users. However, it has enabled us to keep the network as safe as possible within these constraints. The budget for highways improvement and maintenance has been restructured to feed more money into the area of greatest need, routine highway repairs. Using this increase and other corporate provision, it has now become possible to start addressing the current list of outstanding lower priority repair work. The budget provision for routine maintenance in future years has also been increased, so that there should be sufficient funding to keep on top of road repairs in future and undertake them all within normal timescales. Overall, a considerable amount of effort has been made in the last 12 months to make progress in dealing with the problems that I inherited in this service area, not least due to the previous contract structure and performance. The changes made in budget provision for this and future years will enable far better control of routine repairs within prescribed timescales. Taking all this into account, there is confidence of a steadily improving situation after a difficult start to this contract. The substantial changes made by Carillion and the Council are increasing their ability to deliver the contract effectively and to drive improvements within the City Council and the partnership framework.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary to that, Councillor Howard?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Many thanks, Councillor Clare, for that extensive reply. I'm delighted that progress is now being made under the highways provisions. Progress that we may wish as well for the forthcoming season to Derby County, and I know everybody will join me in the Council chamber in wishing the Rams all the best, particularly Nigel Clough.
Councillor Howard, I mean, I'd be the first to say that, because I'm just saying,
I will give my
can we get
supplementary question.
Thank you.
In your opinion, Councillor Clare, was the highways contract under your predecessor in a near terminal situation when the Liberal Democrats took over the council in May 2008?
Councillor Kerr.
It was certainly struggling and needing to be dragged up from its knees, and I hope it's now standing up and it'll soon be running.
Thank you very much. Next question, Councillor Willoughby to Councillor Kerr on the Kedleston Road bus lane. Councillor Willoughby.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and for allowing me the opportunity to ask this question. Good evening, Councillor Kerr. Instead of spending money on a bus lane on Kedleston Road, council taxpayers want money spent on road repairs. So why not follow their wishes?
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And good evening, Councillor Willoughby. Council taxpayers want money spent on a great many things that the council provides, from grass cutting to culture. Not everyone agrees on the priorities, and it is clear that one can't please all the people all the time. The challenge is to find an acceptable mix. One of the Lib Dems' election priorities when we became the largest group last year was to improve public transport. This is clearly something which chimed with a significant number of voters. Bus companies consider more bus lanes a priority, and the Kedleston Road bus lane project was waiting for funding. Incidentally, a high proportion of the cost of the project is actually for a new Pelican Crossing, for which local people had petitioned. Meanwhile, I'm not sure that council taxpayers actually want to spend more money on road repairs. Most people would like to have better roads for the same amount of money. At present, the priority is to make sure our road repairs are cost effective and to a good quality.
Councillor Willoughby, you have a supplementary?
I do indeed. I think we've heard, Councillor Kerr, from other people this evening, the growing concerns, and my mailbox is certainly full of the growing concern of residents about roads that have been, repairs that have been outstanding for ages. So why not just get on and repair them instead of spending money on schemes that residents don't want?
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The balance, the essence of your supplementary is, can we please repair the potholes? If you read the Cabinet report from last week, there was an explanation about the programme of work that is now going forward, and I hope that within 6 months those potholes that people will have identified will have been marked and repaired.
Okay, thank you. Now we move on. That's the end of the questions from non-councillor cabinet members to council cabinet. Now on to item 9, to consider the minutes and recommendations of the council cabinet dated 7th of July 2009. Does anybody wish to speak on that? On 30/9? No? Sorry, Councillor Bolton.
Yes, thank you. Document 9A, Mr Mayor, the issues relating to new funding streams for children and young people. Can the Cabinet Member please tell me, under the Every Child a Reader and the Key Stage 4 engagement programme, how the monies will be allocated to the schools, please?
Councillor Allen.
Immediately no, but I'll research the matter and get the answer to the councillor as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on that? No. Councillor Jones, do you want to move it?
I formally move those then, Mr Mayor.
All those in favour? Against? Okay, it's carried. Item 10 is to consider a report of the Director of Corporate and Adult Services concerning appointment of co-optees to the Climate Change Commission and appointment to the Elizabeth Turner Charity. Councillor Jones?
If there are no other nominations, I'd like to nominate Derek Tuplin to the charity and then formally move the motion as printed.
Are there any other nominations? No? Okay then. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Item 11, to consider the following notice of motion. Councillor Williamson to move and Councillor Repton to second.
Thank you,
Councillor Williamson.
I hope that we can get unanimous support across the Council chamber this evening for this very sensible motion. It's a very modest proposal. It was something which we've made clear in the text of the motion that was incorporated into Labour's alternative budget, but as we didn't get an opportunity to debate that on the evening, we feel it's appropriate to bring this back, because I do know that members from all sides of the chamber have expressed concerns about the closure programme of post offices in this city, and this is a modest sum, and I therefore hope that we can get cross-party support to go some way towards redressing the balance, which I think has gone too far towards the closure of these very important facilities. Now, I do know for a certain fact that the sub-postmaster at the former Chester Green post office is happy to reopen it, because one of the problems I think we've had is that a number of sub-postmasters and postmistresses themselves have not actually wanted to continue running the post office. But here we have a situation where the sub-postmaster is indeed in favour of reopening. Now, I know that the Liberal Democrats in particular, Mr Mayor, will be keen to support this, or should be keen to support this, because I've been just perusing some of the literature that was produced by the Liberal Democrats in various wards around the city at election time and outside of election times. And almost every councillor on the Liberal Democrat benches who were up for election last time actually said they were very much concerned about the closure of post offices. And, for example, I have this one here where it refers to Lucy Kerr, who says that Lucy Kerr, according to the Liberal Democrats, has led the fight against post office closures in Derby. So I sincerely hope that Councillor Kerr will be supporting this motion this evening. And there is another paper produced by the Liberal Democrats here, Mr Mayor, where it says hands off our post officers. And again, Derby North Lib Dem campaigner, Councillor Lucy Kerr, said that she said huge numbers of people in Derby rely on local post offices to pick up their pensions and for other services, and is therefore calling for an end to the closure programme. So hopefully, Councillor Kerr, we've got your support this evening for this motion. It doesn't stop there, though, Mr Mayor. We have further support from Councillor Julie Gins, who circulated a leaflet in her election campaign. She was saying she was in favour of retaining post offices. So, Councillor Gins, wherever you are, I hope that you will be supporting this motion this evening. We also have, who's this one? Oh, Councillor Beattie. Apparently, although Councillor, is it not Beattie? Beattie, is it? What's his name? Beattie, it is Beattie, yeah, sorry. Anyway, yeah. Councillor Beattie, he was also involved in apparently campaigning to keep the post offices open. Councillor Fatullah Khan, here he is. Just got a letter from him here, and he similarly is. You were supporting apparently the retention of post offices. So again, we can look forward, I hope, to your support this evening. Councillor Derek Tuplin, another one, I think, was he, along with Councillor Kerr, was another one who was leading the campaign. Councillor Beattie, I understand, was leading the campaign. I don't know how many leaders they've got, but quite a few it seems. Councillor And I hope particularly that Councillor Richards will support us, because I found 4 leaflets where Councillor Richards was extolling his support. Says here, Finbar's campaign is focusing on, amongst other things, fighting for local post officers. So thank you for that, Councillor Richards. He goes on to say, although Councillor Beattie was apparently leading the fight and Councillor Kerr was leading the fight, he too has led the fight to save our post officers. So as you've led the fight, Councillor Richards, I hope that you too will be supporting this motion. And in yet another one, just in case you weren't sure or you missed the previous leaflet that they circulated, Lib Dem Councillor Finbar Richards says he's well known locally for leading the fight against the post office closure in Darley, which is the one we're talking about this evening, and we have another one here. And not to be outdone, Councillor Jean-Paul Keane is similarly saying that he's amongst him and Lib Dem Councillor Richards is fighting to stop post offices disappearing from our communities. And if I could just perhaps conclude at this stage, Mr Mayor, by just quoting Councillor Richards' personal letter that he sent to his constituency. He said that my fight is not against the other parties, apparently. It is for the best future for you, my friends and neighbours. So, Councillor Richards, I sincerely hope, and all those other councillors on the Liberal Democrat benches who refused to consider our alternative budget in any way, shape or form at the budget setting meeting, have now got an opportunity to put their money where their mouths are. I hope they will support this, because that will give us an opportunity, subject to the approval obviously of Post Office Limited, to reopen a very important facility right in the heart of the Darley ward in Chester Green.
Mr Mayor, I wish to formally second the motion and reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor. Councillor Grimmadale.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In March of last year, the Labour government narrowly defeated a parliamentary motion which had been called by the government, by the Conservative Party. The motion was to halt the closures of local post offices throughout the UK. Prior to the vote, around 90 Labour MPs had been actively campaigning in their constituencies to oppose the closure of local post offices, including Derby North's Bob Laxton. He had been campaigning to save local Derby post offices in Chaddesden and Chester Green in Darley, both wards in his constituency. However, when it came to the vote, Bob Laxton voted with the Labour government to defeat the motion to halt the post office closure programme. The people of Derby, especially those in Chaddesden ward and the Darley ward, will never understand how Bob Laxton could behave like this, especially as it was the most vulnerable in our communities who stood to lose the most from the closure of our local post offices. It seems Bob Laxton will pretend to support his constituents, but then do something completely different when back in Westminster. He has let many people down. He, with the Labour government, voted for the closure of the Chester Green post office and the Chaddesden ward post office. I'd ask all constituencies in Derby North, and in particular in my ward, Chaddesden, and the Darley ward, to remember that when Labour are knocking at their doors, asking for their vote, to remember the hypocrisy and the deceit of Labour's Bob Laxton and the Labour government. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll only make a brief comment on this motion. Many people in Derby have suffered for the closure of post offices over a great number of years. 2 post offices have been closed within my ward alone, both at different times. Interestingly enough, the first closure on Brighton Road was justified by the fact that another post office on London Road in Wilmorton was, in their words, close enough to walk to. They were a mile apart. The Wilmorton post office was the second casualty. Unfortunately, party politics rules the day. The Liberal Democrats versus Labour, backbiting, taking the high moral ground. Missed in the clouds of rhetoric are the masses of ordinary people now without services they deserve and actually want. So whilst I support this motion, which is emotive, any success will be welcomed by the residents of Chester Green, deservedly so. It is just a shame that post office counters and the government couldn't have listened at the time and made this motion unnecessary.
Thank you, Councillor Graves. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Conservative group believes that post offices are vital to local communities, just important as local schools and pubs. Councillor Williamson predictably fails to mention that thousands have been shut under this Labour government, as Councillor Grimmadell has said. In contrast, the Conservatives want to strengthen Britain's post offices. We want to investigate a scheme, for example, to operate local post offices as government general practices for people who have concerns about government services, including tax returns and pension entitlements. We also want to rewrite sub-postmasters' contracts to allow them to provide a greater range of products and services. We also want to improve the post office card account, which is important to millions of families without access to bank accounts. And we want to make changes so that they can benefit from the lower utility bills offered to customers paying by direct debit. As a party, our commitment to local post offices is clear, but this motion contains what Councillor Williamson knows full well is political nonsense served up here tonight to try and astroturf an issue in Darley Ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. 1997, Labour comes to power. 19,000 post offices in this country. They have a first tranche of closures, 4,500, and we as a council were consulted on those closures, and we were advised by Postwatch, the then consumer's body, that if we saved one post office in our area, then another one would be closed instead to make the 4,500 that were required in that first tranche. We were also warned by Postwatch that there would be further closures, and lo and behold, 2,500 further closures, supported by a Labour government. And what were they trying to save on these further closures? Well, the post office was losing £3.5 million a week. But being shrewd businessmen, the Labour Party decided to actually cut the services that they were giving out to local post offices. Benefits, TV licensing, and car tax, even encouraging people to use the internet. Not against using the internet, but there's a lot of people around this city that do not have complete access to the internet. So they were looking to save £3.5 million a week losses. And according to the Public Accounts Committee at Whitehall, this programme would claw back £45 million a year, which is less than 15% of the £293 million of annual savings that this Labour government was predicting that they would make by closing 2,500 post offices. Many of us lobbied in this council, at commissions, and even lobbied MPs. And we did get support from MPs. Here in Derby, but down in Westminster, as Councillor Grimmadell said, things were different. The Postwatch, which was representing the consumer groups, were concerned about the consultation process. It was being railroaded through, and that was their conclusion. So what did the Labour government do? Railroaded Postwatch and got rid of them. So the consumers had no voice whatsoever. And then Councillor Williamson has got the nerve to come to this chamber and ask this council to spend £20,000 to save a post office in this city, when if his elected members at Westminster had got any sense, they would have increased the duties and the responsibilities of post offices across this country. They would have given them ever wider services, and they would have kept them in business where these communities really need them. And the criteria that they're using now is within 3 miles at walking distance you have to have a post office. And that puts another 4,500 post offices in this country under direct threat. What hypocrisy!
Councillor Kerr.
It is pretty hot here tonight, in more ways than one. And this is clearly a hot issue, and it has been for quite a while since the post office closures started. And I'm not going to go through lots more statistics because I think we've had enough. What I do want to say, though, is that Chester Green is clearly being identified specifically in this motion, and it's obviously been understood that here is an erstwhile postmaster who is in the position to go back in, and the shop is still available. There are many other communities in the city which also have lost their post offices, like Will Morton was mentioned, and I think it's ironic that we can say every district centre should have a library, and we haven't gotten written in that every district centre should have a post office, and Chaddesden has lost theirs, and I think that's appalling. But we've highlighted one here which could reopen, but I think we need to be mindful of all the others that we would like reopened as well, and whose communities would like reopened. So let's bear that in mind as well. Let's remember it's not just Chester Green, it's the service that destinations like this can provide for all our communities.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm getting a little bit sick and tired of coming to full council meetings and hearing motions from the Labour group, starting with, if you'd have allowed us to read our alternative budget. Well, I think I better tell you something, Miss Councillor Williams. On the budget meeting of the 2nd of March, item 16, your own motion, you put it in words, if the Council's Cabinet's recommendations leading to the approval of the capital and revenue budgets and the settings of the amounts of council tax are not approved, blah, 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 I think you need to relook at writing your own motions, because it was you, effectively, that made us not listen to alternative budgets. Write your motions properly. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think with all that and the sheer hypocrisy of the Labour group in bringing this motion to this council, I would like to submit an amendment which tries to keep the spirit of the motion, but certainly takes away Labour's commitments to keep post offices open when quite clearly nationally they don't.
The amendment, Mr. Mayor, seems to consist of retaining the first paragraph of the motion, deleting the second paragraph of the motion, and replacing the third paragraph of the motion with the following words. Council therefore calls on the Liberal Democrat administration to approach Post Office Limited to secure the reopening of Chester Green Post Office this year.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Holmes. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't think much else needs to be said on the subject. I think the motion before us, as amended, is a commendable motion, and I commend it to the Chamber to vote on.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, I mean, frankly, this is a stupid amendment because it takes away any sense of the council taking its responsibilities seriously to the people of this city. And there is no point in us having a debate about national issues and what we might wish the government to do or not do, because we are Derby City Council. We are responsible for our own destiny, and we can make a real impact and have an influence on reopening a post office if we are prepared to put a modest sum into the revenue budget to make that happen. Now, quite clearly, what Councillor Jennings' amendment to the motion will do is completely throw out any prospect of the Chester Green Post Office, or any other post office for that matter, in this city reopening. Because the only way, I mean, which we might wish it weren't like this, but the only way in which that post office can reopen is if we agree to put in a modest subsidy to help it to reopen, to provide an essential service that the Conservative group seem to claim is required, and Post Office Limited agree to it as well. So even if we agree this motion tonight, Post Office Limited can still throw it out. And I think what the Conservative group are guilty of here is real duplicity, Mr Mayor, because what they're seeking to do is to try to give the impression to the people of this city that they are in favour of retaining post officers when they know full well, Councillor Jennings must know full well, either that or he's stupid, that this amendment will simply have the effect of doing absolutely nothing, and that post office will be consigned to remain closed, and every other post office that we would seek to reopen will simply not happen. Councillor Jennings, I would ask you to look at some examples, because this shouldn't be about party politics, Mr Mayor. This is about doing... Thank you. This shouldn't be about party politics, Mr Mayor. This should be about the council doing the right thing for Derby. And I would make the point, go down and look at Essex. Essex is a Conservative county council. And the very first local authority that adopted the proposal that I'm putting forward tonight was Essex County Council. You know, they didn't play politics with it. Don't play politics with it here tonight. Let's try and improve a service that you claim you want to provide for the people of this city. So throw out this amendment and support this original substantive motion, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Holmes.
Mr Mayor, don't make it political. Councillor Williamson, this amendment actually strips out the political nonsense that you put into the original motion. You know, it's reverse. Reverse it, please. Don't come here and tell us that we're politicising this by putting the amendment in. It's quite clear. What we are doing here is creating something which all parties can agree on, and we can take this forward. This amendment does that, and I hope we have cross-party support.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wasn't going to speak on this, but I can't sit there and listen to the hypocrisy of Councillor Williamson. Don't make it political. He stood up. He's done a very good job in making sure that the people of Derby know exactly what the Liberal Democrats stand for. That was making it political. This whole motion was political, and I think it's a very sensible amendment that we've got in before us now, and this group will be supporting it.
Does anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Sorry, Councillor Denson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Mr Mayor. We were, I think, going towards a sort of sensible approach to actually target a post office where, as Councillor Williamson identified, there was a way forward to opening it for the people in Chester Green. This amendment, and if the Liberal Democrats support it, their support would mean that the chances of Chester Green residents having a post office opened is dead. If the people who have made the amendment don't understand that, I don't think they understand very much of what is going on in terms of amending the motion. When I first waited to hear what Councillor Jennings was going to say, I thought, yes, he'll take out some of the political elements within the motion, but leave the essence of the resolution to enable the opportunity for a post office to be reinstated in Chester Green in order to meet the concerns of those, that part of the city, and actually achieve what the Liberal Democrats, as ably demonstrated by my colleague here, Councillor Williamson, had said in Chester Green, throughout the city. They, by supporting this resolution, will be saying no to the residents of Chester Green. That's exactly what they'll be doing, and if that's what they want to do, then they should be clear what they have done, and their paper, their literature, their politicising will be for all to see. That is what this amendment does. I would actually urge everybody to reconsider the amendment and not support it, because it will have the impact of not getting this going anywhere further. Asking post office services to review their decision on this post office is like asking for the world to turn upside down. It just doesn't make any sense, because if they start doing that, how many other reviews will they have to do? Now, the Conservatives may actually know that by doing that they are scuppering this particular post office, which may not be in an area that they are actually holding as a priority. Liberal Democrats have said in their literature they do. Certainly the Labour group, the Labour Party, and people on this side do want to do something potentially that can make a better service for the people in Chester Green. So I urge everybody to not follow this mad thought from the Liberal Democrats and Councillor Jennings, who I thought was actually going to be more constructive. He's actually become destructive, and everybody seems to want to follow him. I think this is wrong as an amendment. I think everybody should oppose it, and I still urge everybody to reconsider the original essence of the motions. Without council intervention in terms of some funding, this will not go anywhere. This will be dead in the water.
Thank you, Councillor Dizzer. Councillor Repton on the amendment.
Derby City Council has the opportunity, for once, rather than these pious motions that we sometimes debate in this council chamber that are meaningless and just full of rhetoric. And the original motion means that we can do something that makes a great deal of difference to many hundreds of people's lives in the Chester Green area. Certainly over many months, myself and other people have been talking to the people in depth in Chester Green about the post office, and it's quite clear that the vast majority of people in that area would like us to reopen it. We had the opportunity in May to actually do that, but decisions were made in terms of who was going to run this council. This actual motion before us tonight, for a relatively small amount of money, makes sure that hundreds of people in the Chester Green area, particularly elderly, particularly vulnerable people who have difficulty getting into the city, are having a service that they need. That, combined with a sub-postmaster who is eager, unlike many others throughout the city, to reopen that facility. Sadly, the Chellisford Post Office could have been saved, but my understanding is that the shop owner strongly opposed any fight to reopen it. So I have a grave difference, and the Conservatives ought to be truthful about that. The Conservatives also ought to be truthful and not hypocritical, because I think they have very short memories. I certainly don't, and hopefully the people of Derby don't. I remember during the 1980s, the 1990s, when a Conservative government closed hundreds of post offices throughout this country. So don't preach to us about hypocrisy. You have the opportunity. You have the opportunity tonight to do something once in your life that is honourable for this city, rather than play national party politics in this chamber. You have the opportunity, rather than empty rhetoric, and you have an opportunity with this original motion to reopen that post office for a small amount of money, meet the needs of hundreds of people that I represent, and you have a postmaster willing to do that. If you fail in that I certainly, for one, as the local member for that area, will ensure that every person that voted against it, that people in my area are aware of that. And those people that support it, they'll also be aware of. People outside this chamber ought to be aware of the games that some of you play. We're playing about real people, real people's lives, and real facilities. You have an opportunity. You may scoff, but I don't think the people that I represent will be happy if you're scoffing at their aspirations to open a post office. And I'll certainly make sure that what happens in this council tonight will be reflected in that area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Repton. Councillor Nath.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hypocrisy, spin, that's has almost become part of Councillor Williams' life now. Every time he speaks out of hypocrisy and out of just simply putting the spin on. Let me remind him, he is a councillor for Normanton Ward, so is Councillor Dintzer. Can they remember how many post offices were closed in Normanton Ward? Can they stand up now and say they would like to reopen those post offices? Can they give that commitment here tonight? Then, before that, Councillor Williamson and other members of his group, they were taking that petition about the closure of the toilets, which this group supported. We wanted the toilets to remain open. Let me remind Councillor Williamson another thing. He was the leader of this very council. That when only 2 available toilets, public toilets, in Normanton and Arboretum were closed, and he was the leader. Now he is trying to tell us he's leading the role to keep those toilets open. And they were the only 2 toilets, one near the library and other on the Sinfin Lane. They were closed when he was the leader. So what is this, Mr. Mayor? Isn't it hypocrisy? Isn't it putting spin on things? So, Councillor Williamson, just learn something. Don't lead your group through your hypocrisy and spin. Come to realize the reality and try to live like a real person rather than living in a dreamland.
I see Councillor Nath. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think Councillor Repton was listening to what I said. The criteria that this government has now introduced means that 99% of the people have to live within 3 miles of a post office. If there are more than one post office within that 3 mile area, then instead of under the previous legislation, the postmasters would have been paid compensation to actually close their post offices, as happened to 3 post offices in my ward. They would just go under, literally be left to fail by this Labour government if they could not keep going on their own. So not only have they got a closure programme, but they've also got a programme of closing them without paying compensation. And that's without reducing the core funding that sub-postmasters get these days. That's without reducing the services that are being allowed to be provided in post offices. So until we have got the agreement of the post office service to reopen a post office in this city, this council would only be putting under threat any post office within a 3 mile radius of Chester Green. Now, does this council really want to do that? And does this council want to say to those sub-postmasters in that area, tough, you're not even going to get paid compensation for doing it? And if they're competing for services as sub-post officers, then the post officers are not in that area going to be able to keep going because they won't be competitive. So It's by stealth additional post office closures. This amendment makes it very clear that we need to negotiate with the post office before we can reopen any new post office or any post office that has been closed, even if the sub-postmaster is willing. All we are doing is giving Post Office Limited the opportunity to make further cuts. And I did say that those further cuts, so post offices within a 3-mile radius, that gives the opportunity for another 4,500 post offices to go. So do we want to keep the main post office in Derby and then draw a 3-mile ring round it and find that the other main post office ought to be closed? Do we want to close them in Spondon, Chaddeston, Chellaston, Alveston? That's what we are looking at under the current government proposals. We're not being hypocritical. What we are being is sensible, and we are asking this council to support a sensible amendment. If you want to put further post offices under threat, then carry on with your current scheme. But the public will have the opportunity in the not too distant future to vote on those things that you have been doing nationally. And believe me, national politics and local politics do have an impact with the voters, as perhaps you'll see next May.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Councillor Hickson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, it seems to me that the Labour group have rather got their collective items of underwear in a twist over this issue. We've heard all the superlatives this evening about this particular motion. We've heard stupid and mad and pious. Especially nice to hear from the sleeping member for Darley Ward, Councillor Repton, who I thought had retired actually, but is still there occasionally to pop up. But the point about the amendment is not stupid as proposed by Councillor Jennings, but eminently sensible in a motion that can be carried by this council with a unanimous majority. This was nothing more than a cheap attempt by the Labour group to try and introduce some sort of discussion on the failed and no-hope budget that fell at the meeting of the council that set the budget this year. No more than that. I suspect there are only crocodile tears as far as Chester Green Post Office is concerned. They don't care about Chester Green Post Office particularly. They only want to try and discuss the no-hope failed budget that never took place. Councillor Repton, though, does introduce an interesting point when he talks about doing the honourable thing. And if the honourable member for Derby North had done the honourable thing when he had the opportunity, then we wouldn't now be seeing the closures of post offices, including Chester Green, on the scale that we have. But the honourable member for Derby North did not do the honourable thing. He did the dishonourable thing by saying one thing to voters and then going through the voting lobbies and saying something entirely different. And that's the cause of the problem with this. It's not the council's responsibility. It's what members of Parliament did, in particular what Labour members of Parliament did by voting for the post office closure programme and trying to tell voters that they were doing one thing while they did something else. That's at the heart of all of this, and it's that duplicity that's led us to the problem that we're in now. The amendment that Councillor Jennings proposes is eminently sensible. It puts forward now a motion that this council, a majority of members of this council can support. It brings some sanity into what otherwise would have been a stupid motion, and I think that the council now can move forward and vote and support it.
Just a couple more. Councillor Kerr.
I think the point I wanted to make was to do with following on from what I said before about the number of post offices that we have in the city. We know from Labour's proposals back in March that they have the vision of opening one and another one next year and another one next year and another one next year. And it's therefore, if this was to be successful, we'd very soon see, I think, another motion coming through saying Abbey Street Post Office, Osmaston Road Post Office, Ashbourne Road Post Office, they would be coming up one at a time, and it would be another 20,000, another 20,000, another 20,000. And in the current climate, I think when we are hearing people saying we ought to be putting this hundreds of thousands of pounds into this project or that project, and we say, well, hang on, where's it coming from? We have to ask whether we have really assessed which post offices are most deserving, or whether we actually have other ways of providing those services and those needs. So an ad hoc decision like this, I don't think does us as a council justice if we have to put the finance in to back it up. And I very much hope that the Post Office will look at this and say, look, here is a case for the needs of the people of Chester Green, and the Chester Green people will mostly use the very busy Post Office now on Victoria Street, and it could reduce the queues there. Then maybe they'll say yes, and I certainly hope they will, and they'll put that money in and reopen it. So I support this amendment, the amendment that's been put to us, and let's hope that Labour can as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to put it to a vote as proposed.
Recorded vote, Mr Mayor.
Okay.
Please, thank you. I'd like to call for.
What, like you recorded the questions for Northern Forum?
Quiet, please. Quiet, please, quiet in the gallery. Thank you. Okay, it's going to be a recorded vote.
Will members please indicate whether they are for or against the amendment, or whether they are abstaining as I call out their names. Councillor Allen. Councillor Banwaite. Councillor Baxter. Councillor Bayliss. Councillor Bolton. Councillor Kerr. Councillor Carr. Councillor Shearer. Councillor Dinser. Councillor Gins. Councillor Graves. Councillor Grimmadell. Councillor Harwood. Councillor Hickson. Councillor Higginbottom. Councillor Hurd. Councillor Holmes. Councillor Hussain. Councillor Ingle. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jennings. Councillor Jones. Councillor Keane. Councillor F. Khan. Councillor R. Khan. Councillor Leeming. The Mayor, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Nater. Councillor Nath. Councillor Poulter. Councillor Rawson. Councillor Redfern. Councillor Repton. Councillor Richards. Councillor Roberts. Councillor Shankar. Councillor Skelton. Councillor Troop. Councillor Tuplin. Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Webb. Councillor Williams. Councillor Williamson. Councillor Willoughby. Councillor Winter. Councillor Wood.
Mr Mayor, 34-16 against.
Okay, the amendment is now carried. Back to the substantive motion. Anybody wish to speak on the original? Councillor Williamson, would you want to sum up?
Well, yes, I do, very briefly, Mr Mayor. I mean, this is really a pointless motion now. I think the people of Derby have seen the Liberal Democrats and Conservatives playing politics with this and trying to fight a national debate in the local council chamber. There was a real opportunity to do something to reopen a post office. Councillor Kerr has conceded that the Labour's alternative budget did make provision to reopen additional post offices into the future. But Councillor Grimmadell, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Webb, who else was there? Councillor Jennings, Councillor Nath, Councillor Hickson, all irrelevant. Every single one of them, every single word you spoke was completely irrelevant to the debate we were having tonight, because you were fighting a battle that took place in the House of Commons. Well, if you want to fight a battle in the House of Commons, or you want to have a debate in the House of Commons or about the House of Commons, stand for Parliament. At least Councillor Kerr is trying to do that. I mean, she'll fail, but she's trying to do that and get in there to have that opportunity. But, you know, it's just nonsense. This was a genuine attempt to try to move the city forward, improve services in a way which would have been significant and meaningful for people in a large part of the city for a very modest sum. I mean, Councillor Hickson's comment, which was to some extent reinforced by Councillor Kerr, reminded me of like a Uriah Heep when he was standing there wringing his hands saying, well, it's nothing to do with the council, we shouldn't get involved in this. That was exactly the same argument, Mr Mayor, that we heard from the opposition parties to the alternative budget. They didn't want to get involved in providing mortgages, they didn't want to get involved in helping small business, they didn't want to get involved in trying to tackle climate change, they didn't want to get involved in trying to improve public transport because they claimed it was nothing to do with us. And it's very clear, I mean, if ever there was a very clear message, and one would have thought it's pretty clear already, that the Liberal Democrats, when they put this nonsense out, it's just that, for the birds, utter nonsense. How can you on the one hand claim to be Councillor Richards in favour of retaining post officers and then oppose this motion when you know full well that by removing any contribution, financial contribution from the council, it's simply a pious motion. The council will, of course, duly go to Post Office Limited and say, will you open Chester Green Post Office? And they'll say, no. And that'll be the end of the matter. And that's down to you, Councillor Richards, in spite of your communications where you were saying you want to support your friends and your neighbours. You've let your friends and your neighbours down tonight, Councillor Richards, as you have Councillor Keane, as you have Councillor Kerr, and all the rest of you Liberal Democrats who just spout such a lot of nonsense. It's just meaningless. It's just meaningless. Meaningless nonsense, Mr Mayor. I think this is yet another example of the duplicity of the Liberal Democrats, and hopefully they will pay the price in due course at the ballot box.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Okay, nobody else wants to speak, so obviously you've done the summing up. So we'll move it to the vote. All those in favour of the substantive motion as amended? Those against? Carried. Is everybody okay for a minute? You don't want a 5-minute break or anything, do you? Or is everybody all right? Okay, fine. Motion 2. Councillor Williamson to move, Councillor Dinser to second. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, the Lib Dems and the Conservatives have disgraced themselves over the first motion. Let's hope they can redeem themselves a little with the second motion that we have before us this evening. Again, a very straightforward motion, Mr Mayor, that will go some way to improving the quality of service that is provided by this council. Again, and I make no apologies for pointing out proposals that were contained in Labour's alternative budget that the Lib Dems and the Tories conspired to ensure that we couldn't even have a debate upon it. However, that said, we have, since that debate took place, seen the strength of feeling in relation to the withdrawal of school transport. We heard Councillor Allen's quite disgraceful remarks, if I might say so, Mr Mayor, in response to Councillor Bolton's question this evening about his attitude to the provision of school transport. And to try to put one parent against another, Councillor Allen, is quite shameful, actually, because what we should be doing as a council is setting out a vision to improve the services that we provide, and in particular in relation to this issue, to improve the provision of school transport in our city. Now, we know as a result of the work that was undertaken by the Overview and Scrutiny Commission that to extend school transport in Derby to all schools so that they would have a commensurate service to that currently enjoyed by the faith schools and some children attending Derby Moor and Bemrose would cost in the order of £1.5 million. Now, clearly we can't find that money immediately, but I think we should set our stall out very clearly to say that is the vision for school transport in our city, and that surely is the direction that we should be wanting to take the council to help families and children to get to school more safely, to actually reduce the amount of congestion on our roads in this city. And we all know that at school holiday times, the amount of congestion during the school run period is considerably reduced. So surely it seems to me to make sense not to reduce for a relatively modest sum of money, it has to be said, to reduce a provision of a service that's been enjoyed by a particular community in this city, well, since time immemorial, as far as I'm aware, Mr Mayor, as long as I've been on this council, and certainly as long as we've been a unitary authority, I believe that this has been a service that has been provided. And Councillor Kerr, I think it was, who talked about basically giving people some certainty, I think, in one of the meetings that she addressed, that we should provide the same service to everybody. What an equally bad service to everybody is no justification, Councillor Kerr, for the withdrawal of the school transport to the schools that I've mentioned. So I would urge Councillor Kerr, and it's probably going to fall on deaf ears, to support this motion in relation to, as far as it goes, supporting on providing additional school transport, but also, and we know from the strength of feeling that we saw when we were collecting signatures in the city centre to improve public transport in this city, that there is a considerable groundswell of opinion, not simply to retain and indeed improve school transport, but to actually do something about the situation in relation to access to the new Royal Hospital, the new City Hospital in Mickleover. And we proposed a motion here, something that we included in our alternative budget as well, to provide a direct service for people that would take in much of the ring road, not obviously all of the ring road, because there is a large section of the ring road that where people don't live close by. But there is a route that could be adopted, where it could go perhaps from Pride Park along London Road, or maybe down Ascot Drive on occasions, picking up residents in Alveston, picking up residents in Allenton, in Osmaston, in Normanton, in Littleover even, right the way up to Utoxeter Road and into the City Hospital there, and then back out again into Mackworth Estate, picking up residents from Mackworth, down the Ring Road again, and off along Kedleston Road, up the Broadway, picking up residents in Darley Ward, and then back again and to along the Ring Road and into the City Hospital and back to the Pride Park and Ride Centre. Now, it seems to me an eminently sensible thing to do. This question that was adopted, or this issue, this motion, this decision, should I say, that was adopted by the Council Cabinet is going to be called in by some of my colleagues, because it is quite clearly in breach of one of the Council's key corporate priorities, which is about leading Derby towards a better environment. How can we be leading Derby towards a better environment when we're putting more traffic on our roads, when we are endangering children going to school, when we're creating more pollution and therefore contributing to an increase in climate changing emissions from additional transport on our roads? So it's in breach of that. It's in breach of the Human Rights Act, Article 8, which actually talks about a right to family life. This is clearly going to impinge on families in this city who've previously enjoyed a very valuable service. And thirdly, it's disproportionate because of the disproportionate impact, not just on the families in question, the disproportionate impact on the congestion that it will create on our roads, the additional danger that it will not just put the children who are going to have this service withdrawn, but other children who negotiate our roads in this city, Mr Mayor. So for whichever way you look at this...
Sorry, Councillor. Can you be quiet, the public gallery? Cheers. Thank you.
Whichever way you look at this, Mr Mayor, whether it's about the Council's corporate priority in relation to the environment, whether it's about our commitment to human rights, whether it's indeed about looking at the proportionality of a mean-spirited decision to take away school transport when we know the strength of feeling is running so high. How can we do that? How can we not support children? How can we not support patients and others who want to access the City Hospital? We know of the real problems that are being created for Councillor Kerr and her colleagues in the Littleover ward because of the real problems of workers at the Royal Hospital not having enough parking spaces and parking on the streets. I understand there was 150 people plus at your neighbourhood forum the other day, pleading for a solution, some way, something, some gleam of light at the end of the tunnel that Councillor Kerr would be able to offer to them to offer some relief. Well, we've offered a gleam of light for Councillor Kerr to take back perhaps to her next neighbourhood forum meeting to say, well, thanks to the Labour group, you might not want to say that, the Council has agreed a way forward that might not resolve all of the problems, but it will go a long way to actually reducing the need for the number of people that are currently got no alternative but to take a car to work. We've got to, I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, support this motion this evening if we hold in any esteem at all the corporate priorities which were adopted by this Council, I accept not unanimously, but certainly overwhelmingly. And I therefore hope that people will not once again seek to play politics with this, but to support this very sensible motion tonight and provide some additional support for parents and for patients in Derby who are relying on us to give a lead to show the way. I move.
Mr. Mayor, I second the motion and reserve my right to speak later.
Okay, thank you. If you cannot shout from the public gallery, if you do it again, I'm going to ask you to leave. So it's a bit rude when people are trying to talk. So thank you. Councillor Willoughby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to speak. Now, I was on the Children and Young People's Commission during the municipal year 2007 to 2008, when, of course, Labour were in control of the council. And I remember attending a special meeting of that commission to discuss some proposals for discussing the provision of faith school transport. So I'm very interested in the concern of the Labour group towards these current proposals, and indeed they've mentioned it in this motion. So I look back at the archives of council meetings on the internet. Indeed, I found a record that this meeting was held on the 17th of July 2007, and the decision and recommendations of that meeting were then referred to the Council Cabinet of the 31st of July 2007. Now, the notes of the Council Cabinet, and I'll just read out the decision that was made there. These proposals to cut this provision resulted from across-the-board need for a 10% budget saving that was obviously agreed at that year's budget on the 1st of March 2007. That was obviously the Labour Party's budget. But the decision of the Cabinet was, firstly, obviously, to note the comments of the Children and Young People's Overview and Scrutiny Commission. Secondly, to increase fares for existing charge services by 15% from September 2007. Thirdly, to confirm that those pupils currently receiving free transport to faith schools will continue to do so until they leave statutory education or change school. And fourthly, to carry out a further period of consultation when the schools return for the autumn term. The reasons for that was there was a need for the Council to identify and implement budget saving, and also there had been concerns raised about the consultation. It also noted that, incidentally, former Conservative councillor who was on the Cabinet then, Richard Smalley, requested that his vote against the decision be recorded. So as we've heard in earlier motions, to me this is yet another example of maybe a U-turn, of inconsistency with our national policy maybe, by the Labour Party, and blatant opportunism. Because, of course, they've regarded themselves greatly as friends of the Catholic Church, yet some of their other national policies, as we've heard again this evening, have discriminated against that. So it's another inconsistency by the Labour Party. Now, Mr. Mayor, just to conclude, I know that you like a bit of a joke and are keen on comedy and stuff, yes. And indeed, those people who, like me, who work in engineering, will know that engineers like me, of my sort of generation, like to often refer to like Monty Python, and particularly Monty Python sketches. And indeed, I like to refer Monty Python sketches to situations made by senior management. Well, there's only one obvious Monty Python sketch for this situation here that I'll end this speech with, and it's the most famous of them all, the parrot sketch, because I hope the voters will see through this blatant opportunism by the Labour group and the Labour Party that Councillor Webb has already referred to, and come the elections next May, to quote the sketch, and I'll try it in my best John Cleese voice, the Labour Party, they will be deceased. They will be, the Labour government, they will be deceased. They will be no more. They will be a former government. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Well, I don't know how to follow that, really, actually. So, but well done. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And on that note, I think I'll just submit a suitable amendment to the motion.
The amendment consists of the first paragraph reading as follows. This might be the best way to describe the amendment. Just to read you the new first paragraph. Council considers that public transport in Derby could be enhanced to a standard compatible with an ambitious city. In the second paragraph, there's just the deletion of the City Hospital and the insertion of Royal Derby in its stead. The third paragraph is removed in its entirety, and the fourth paragraph would read, Council therefore demands that the Liberal Democrat administration gives a commitment to retain the school buses they have axed and explore proposals for a ring road bus service. Is that clear? Is everybody okay with that?
Is that seconded? Councillor Hicks. Did everybody get that on that? Yep. Okay. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think we've heard the words quite often tonight. Political opportunism, U-turns, showboating even, which was probably a new one tonight that I'll use. The worst word that I think I've heard tonight, which is probably the most appropriate word, is hypocrisy. And being called stupid by Councillor Williamson, I consider to be quite an achievement. I'm quite happy for Councillor Williamson to think I'm stupid. It's very clear to me, Mr Mayor, that Labour are on their hind heels and they are not expecting to be anywhere near in control next year, making all these promises that they can't keep, throwing millions of pounds at problems that they know they haven't got to deliver. It's very easy for them to sit over there and say, why don't we do this? Why don't we spend this £1 million? Why don't we spend that £1.5 million? The simple answer is, Mr Mayor, that they aren't the ones that are going to have to deliver. They are going to be the third party in Derby, in fact, in a few minutes. Mr Mayor, I think the amendment submitted, once again, takes the stupid Labour politicisation out of the motion and actually makes it a motion that could be supported cross-chamber. It makes it a sensible, unpolitical, cross-party motion that could actually be supported cross-party and deliver for Derby. I commend the amendment to you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Councillor Williamson.
I mean, I think our group, with regret, could accept the amendment. It doesn't go far enough because it doesn't really address the issue in relation to the bus service to the Royal Hospital. To simply say that we will ask the Cabinet to look at ways of exploring a ring road service is, you know, okay. I mean, it's a bit like really what you agreed with the Post Office. Nothing in reality is really going to happen, or very unlikely to happen. But if, and perhaps it might be helpful if Mr Foote could read or just be clear that what we're saying, if we agree this motion tonight, that the Council will be calling on the Cabinet to retain the school bus service to faith schools, Bemrose and Derby Moor that are threatened with the axe, and look at ways of finding a bus service provision to the Royal Hospital along the Ring Road, then I think we could live with that. It doesn't go far enough, but it goes some way, and I suppose half a loaf's better than none.
Sorry, did you want Michael Foot to go through that again?
To clarify that point, I'd be grateful, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Yes, Mr Mayor. The final paragraph of the amendment does read that Council demands that the Liberal Democrat administration, which it means the Cabinet, gives a commitment to retain the school buses they have axed and explore proposals for a Ring Road bus service.
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. And I'll speak now. I think I probably won't need to speak on the substantive, if this becomes the substantive. I wanted to start off, actually, with talking about the school buses and the hyperbole and scaremongering that Labour have been doing with their petition. And I'll say it in those terms because I will try to believe that they actually believe that what they're saying is the truth. But I don't think they do understand what has been proposed and what we have agreed. And I hope that comes out in the call-in whenever the meeting is arranged. However, I think it would be useful if the leader of the group did understand what he was talking about, and if he would like a one-to-one briefing with me or with officers on this subject, I know it is risky, then I will see that we make time for that. Regarding the hospital travel plan, the hospital and the hospital bus, it is actually the hospital who are in the best position to know where their staff are coming from and where their patients are coming from and where potentially visitors are coming from, though that third one is a bit more tenuous. The council has been pushing the hospital hard to actually deliver a travel plan rather than just have a travel plan which they created about 7 years ago and is not up to date with the amount of staffing they have. They are looking at it rather more seriously and energetically now than they appeared to be a year ago, and that is good news, though it would have been nice if they'd been doing it a bit more energetically a year ago. And, for example, the university and the hospital are together talking about having a linked bus service that would support both the hospital and the university's needs for an outer link service. And that sort of service actually, I think, stands a better chance of needing a smaller subsidy because it's doing two jobs at once. I'm therefore a bit concerned about the council leading on the identification and provision of that service. I think it's the hospital that needs to lead, and we need to support the hospital. And so while this comes through as an expectation for the Cabinet to consider, I think I'll give you warning now that the way we are likely to consider it is to encourage the most appropriate organisations to be actually doing that consideration and encouraging them to do that. So I support these proposals. I think it's a big improvement on what we started with, and I hope that we've got cross-party support on that.
Councillor Dinser.
Thank you. I think Councillor Kerr needs a one-to-one consultation. This amendment actually doesn't take away the essence of the original motion, as far as I can read it. It takes away some of the issues that may have been sort of part of the Conservative group's idea of removing Labour group. But I note that in the final paragraph, their amended motion still has the words to retain the school buses they threaten to axe and implement the Labour group's proposals for a Ring Road hospital bus service. Well, I think I think paragraph 3 was left as it was. Michael Foot. Sorry? Paragraph 3.
Paragraph 3 was deleted.
The last paragraph.
4 was amended in the way that I read out a few minutes ago.
Right. The essence of what we were proposing is still there. So in that basis, I'm happy to actually support the amended motion. And really, in terms of Councillor Kerr talking about hyperbole and scaremongering, some of the concerns for the parents and the children who are going to be impacted by this particular decision of the Cabinet, Liberal Democrat Cabinet, is devastating for those individuals. Councillor Allen talks about them not being the majority and being a minority. That may be so, but it's not scaremongering when people are going to be losing something, and we know what people have said in petitions and public consultations and forums. Regarding who should lead on this, quite clearly the hospital, and quite correct, the Derby Royal Hospital should be leading on it, but the City Council has a responsibility to show leadership and to show and represent the concerns of the local constituents. And that is retained in this motion, and I, for that reason, would want to support it. I know from Normanton Ward, the forums we've had, there's been great support and questions raised because we've had the hospital administration in attendance, and quite clearly the need for a service which can allow people who live in areas like Normanton, some parts inside the ring road, some parts outside the ring road, to easy access to the hospital is something that's needed and demanded by hundreds of people who attended the 3 forums that we've got in Normanton. And Councillor Williams said other areas forums also indicate the same thing. So there are things in here which we do need to progress with. Councillor Allen, in his earlier contribution to the question from Councillor Bolton, talked about that he was happy with the consultation process that was originally deciding on the school buses being removed for the particular schools that were identified. I don't know if he was, if he'd remembered reading the consultation. It talked about the response for the funding being removed for the particular schools. The consultation said 65% of people said it should not be removed. He was in support of that, but then he actually answered a question saying yes to Cabinet decision to remove this facility. The respondent also asked, would you like to have a service which is unequally provided? And they said no, but they would like to raise the services to other people, not remove the service for a small minority. Again, that's in the consultation that Councillor Allen earlier said he was satisfied with. So both those things indicate that the Liberal Democrats, I mean, I don't know whether they are what they support or what they don't support, but they make one decision in Cabinet and then they're willing to support other decisions here. I think that's just, what's the word, saying one thing in one place and doing another in another place, and that's just the way they function, as we saw with the earlier motion. So I would support the amended motion. It is not as strong in the way that we had as our motion, but it still gets the thrust of what needs to be done. It also gets the message across to the Liberal Democrats and those others who want to change the services or not improve them, that there is enough of a majority here to progress this in a positive way.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to move it to a vote. All those in favour of the amendment? All those against? Okay, that's carried. Councillor Winston, would like to sum up on the original?
I think so, Mr Mayor. I think we're pretty
Sorry,
clear.
is there anybody else wishing to speak before Councillor Kerr? Sorry, I jumped the gun there.
I didn't think I was going to
Councillor Kerr.
But it's been pointed out to me that I had actually forgotten that the final paragraph doesn't only talk about the hospital buses but also talks about the school bus services. I had so much explained that I thought that it wasn't understood properly that I had neglected to think that actually that incorrect assumption is still in the final paragraph. Given that the vast majority of the school buses are now being run by a private company, Notts and Derby, which makes them far more flexible and far more people are going to be able to use them than under the decisions that Labour had taken earlier, but also that the purpose of the other bus services is actually to carry specific children, and it's ensuring that those children can get to school that is the issue, and not that we're providing a bus service. So that element, to say that we have a commitment to retain school buses, is too open-ended. It needs qualifying, which this motion doesn't have in it.
Councillor Repton.
Yes, I wasn't going to speak, but after that intervention I felt that I actually must, because in general I'm in favour. Half a cake is better than none. Councillor Kerr talked about scaremongering. The only scaring that took place was your proposals and the many hundreds of families and individuals and school governors and parents throughout the city were concerned at those proposals and still are. Let's start with the consultation. I represent Darley Ward. St Benedict's School is in my area. The first that the head of St Benedict's knew about these proposals was when he heard me on Radio Derby with Councillor Kerr debating my concerns about her proposals. I didn't interrupt you, Lucy. Please try not to interrupt me. At the meeting that we actually had, you were aware, Lucy, that despite what you were saying, that there were still concerns there from parents, there were still there concerns from heads, there were concerns from the unions. There is no guarantee of a place on those buses for individuals. Issues have already been raised that if a private company can afford to run that bus service at £1 a head with no subsidy, what was our procurement system like in the first place? Major question marks about it. Also what was said, which you haven't reflected, and we're arguing for, if a private bus company can afford to run that bus service for £1 per head, we could, in theory, still put a subsidy in, but a reduced subsidy, and lower that financial burden on families who are finding money at this moment in time very tight indeed. And you seem to be ignoring their requests. I still think there's an obligation for you to go further on this and simply not pretend that a private bus company coming in will resolve all those problems, all those fears. Let me get back to the problems with regard to St Benedict's. Many hundreds of more cars will be using a road which is already congested. There will be increased risk for people using those roads and using those schools. Local groups, such as the Broadway Action Group, still have concerns about road safety and congestion. Here we have the party that champions public transport, the party that introduced the bus lane on Duffield Road. What do they then do? They remove the buses that use the bus lane on Duffield Road. That's some policy by some party. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that. Councillor Williamson, would you like to sum up?
Well, yeah, and it's really in response to Councillor Kerr's final comment there. Let me be absolutely clear, and I think it was very clear from what Mr Foot said, that the amended motion does, and Mr Foot will correct me if I'm wrong, I'm hoping, demand that the Lib Dem administration gives a commitment to retain the school buses they threatened to axe. That's not about bringing in the private sector, Councillor Kerr. That is about retaining the school buses that you threatened to take away from parents who send their children to those schools. So let's be under no illusion. That's what Council will be demanding if this motion is passed tonight.
Okay, we're going to move to the vote on the substantive motion as amended. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Okay, moving on to motion 3. Councillor Jennings to move, Councillor Holmes to second.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Cynics might say, and some already have, notably those on the Labour bench, that this motion is about a numbers game. However, the Conservative group do not see it like that. This motion is presented to best prepare us for the challenges ahead, and to clearly place Labour in third place in the city to properly reflect the shifting political landscape. The Labour group constantly cry in this chamber about their budget proposals not being debated earlier this year, and espouse the view that their budget would have been the saviour of the city. Indeed, as we have seen from the previous two motions submitted by Labour, they constantly cry. But, Mr Mayor, at what cost? Quite clearly there was nothing to be debated, as the Labour proposals were based on spending ridiculous amounts of money from borrowing and reserves amounting to millions of pounds, and were obviously following the lead of the failing policies of a failing government, who believe that you can spend and borrow your way out of recession. Councillor Williamson will get his chance to debate his proposals at the ballot box next May. We look forward to doing the same. I ask myself what the people who choose to vote locally actually vote for. Well, I firmly believe that they elect representatives who they believe will ensure that the business of council is conducted in a cost-efficient manner, that services are delivered effectively, and with a firm eye on value for money. I do not believe that they vote for recklessness, the burdening of future debt on taxpayers at a local level when government is already doing a good enough job of that on their own. And I do not believe that they vote for increases in services at any cost. And what of Labour's claim that they are the only ones holding the current administration to account? I would remind Council, Mr Mayor, that despite Labour's protestations and misrepresentation to the local press, in fact outright lies, it was the Conservative group who halted the closure programme of the public toilets in the city. Councillor Williamson is stupid. He is quoted in the local press as saying the Conservatives never collected a single signature for the petition to close the toilets. He well knows that Conservatives were working alongside his group on the streets. I can name a few. Councillor Williams, Councillor Berry, and our own prospective parliamentary candidate for Derby North, Mr Stephen Mould. In fact, if you want the photographs, we'll show them to you. I would venture to suggest that he also knows that every single member of the Conservative group indeed signed the petition. What he also significantly failed to mention is that it was the constitutional brilliance of Councillor Hickson who halted the closure programme before the petition was even delivered. And that this is a matter of public record, quite easily available for any person who would wish to examine the records. Mr Mayor, it was also the Conservative group, after presenting a fully costed proposal for a 2.5% council tax increase this year, who forced the council to live within its means by restricting this year's council tax rise to 3.25%, a figure significantly lower than either of the two opposition groups wanted to impose. And we will continue to insist that efficiency of delivery of services is the way forward, and not the continued round of annual council tax increases with no visible improvement in the service received by the taxpayer. In short, Mr Mayor, we believe that effective opposition is also constructive opposition. And should this motion succeed this evening, it will enable this group to engage with senior officers on a legitimate basis as the official opposition in order to help drive the city forward and improve delivery of services whilst ensuring the burden to the taxpayer remains as low as possible. Indeed, Mr Mayor, should a Conservative government take control of the country next year, and the residents of Derby at the same time elect a Conservatively led council, we will pledge now, this evening, that council tax will not rise under Conservative control. We will implement a council tax freeze whilst maintaining the delivery of frontline services. That will be our challenge. Excuse the rudeness of the Labour benches, Mr Mayor, they don't know how to behave. This, we believe, in these harshest of economic times, is what the people want, rather than forever increasing taxes burdened onto them when it is least affordable, just as this Labour government is doing. Mr Mayor, I believe that the residents of Derby will be better served having the Conservative group nominated as the group of official opposition for the reasons mentioned, and I commend this motion to the Chamber.
Thank you, Councillor General. We've got Councillor Graves. Oh, sorry, has that been seconded? Okay.
I reserve my right to speak, Mr Mayor.
Thanks. Thanks, Councillor Graves. Cheers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I hope we do not dwell on this motion, Mr Mayor. I would ask you to use your discretion. This motion will not affect the ordinary member of the public, and they will not overly be concerned. We should all be here for the people we represent, not for our own vanity and delusions of grandeur. I respectfully ask for the vote to be taken and move on to important items for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hurd.
Mr Mayor, I just wanted to say that the maths are pretty easy on this one. and we've decided that the whip is not being applied in our case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nater. Okay. Sorry, it's Councillor Williamson and then Councillor Kerr.
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, I mean, quite frankly, Mr Mayor, this is an irrelevant motion from an irrelevant party. The fact is, irrespective of what happens tonight, I mean, we haven't got the numbers, and, you know, I mean, Councillor Jennings is that desperate for some semblance of recognition that he's desperate to be the official leader of the opposition on the council. It will make not a blind bit of difference to the people of this city. And let's be clear, for the record, the Conservative group have not acted as an effective opposition on this council. Despite Councillor Jennings' protestations, they haven't really held this administration to account in any way, shape or form. They turned up, they hijacked the first day of the Lola campaign, where we were campaigning against the crass proposal to close public toilets in this city, but we never saw head nor hide of them ever since that day, apart from Councillor Willoughby, who crossed the floor and signed the petition when we were debating the matter in this chamber. It really is a nonsense. They were conspicuous, it has to be said, Mr Mayor, by their absence when we were standing shoulder to shoulder with the parents who were concerned about the removal of school buses in this city. They were nowhere to be seen when we were supporting traders and residents who were concerned about CCTV cameras. And they went further. Councillor Jennings wrote to me suggesting some proposal, some new protocol, which would have sought to silence, to gag elected members from effectively representing their constituents. So we're not going to take any lectures at all from the Conservative group. If they want to pass this motion, or if they can get enough support from their colleagues on the Liberal Democrat benches, well, so be it. It won't change our way of operating. We will continue to hold this shambolic administration to account, irrespective of whether we're called the official opposition or not. We, the Labour Group, are the only effective opposition in this city. We are the only credible administration in waiting. And God help us if ever the Conservative group were to get into power in this city. Because for Councillor Jennings to stand there and claim he wants to move the city forward, but he wants to cut council tax and make all sorts of savage reductions in public spending, it just simply can't be done. And let's also, for the record, be clear, Mr Mayor, before we run away with this notion that the Conservative group are trying to put out there, that in some way the Labour group were profligate when we were running this authority. Derby was moving forward. Derby had inward investment coming into this city. Jobs were increasing in Derby when Labour were in charge. The Green agenda was moving forward with some gusto in this city, Mr Mayor. But since we've lost power as a result of some defections from our ranks to the Conservative group and the Conservative group's decision to allow the Lib Dems to form administration in this city, Derby has stagnated. And we won't get the kind of leadership that this city needs if the Tories were ever in a position to regain control of Derby. We saw what happened, Mr Mayor, when they had a formal alliance with the Liberal Democrats from 2003 to 2005. We saw swinging increases in home care charges. We saw cuts right across the board. And we saw council tax increases in spite of cuts in services well in advance of what was actually required. I think, Mr Mayor, this frankly is an irrelevant motion this evening. I'm not even sure whether we're going to even bother to vote on it. It's not about titles, it's not about names, it's about actually making a difference for the people of this city. The Labour Group is committed to making a difference for the people who live in Derby. We've demonstrated that by the way in which we've conducted ourselves in opposition. We've demonstrated that tonight by the motions we've put forward that have been voted down on one occasion and watered down on the second. It's Labour that are the official opposition in this city, irrespective of what Councillor Jennings might say or might wish.
Okay, we'll move to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? Put me in there as well. Yeah. All those against?
For 21 against 15.
Okay, that motion is carried. Okay, on to motion number 4, Councillor Poulter to move, Councillor Holmes to second.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'm sure if your public inquiries, surgeries and letters that you receive are like mine, the state of the roads and footpaths within this city are being raised on an increasing basis. These concerns increase ever-increasing potholes, the trip hazards that are out there. There are complaints about these defects and the poor and slow responses to repairing them. And even more importantly, the poor standard at which they are repaired, because this just adds to the problem. There is now no ongoing maintenance programme, and all this while the cost of these services from Derby roads increases and spirals out of control. Mr. Mayor, the public, and if we're honest, all of us as councillors know that we are still not achieving our council's own priority of providing an excellent service and value for money when it comes to this highways maintenance contract. As a result, I bring this motion detailed in tonight's agenda. As far back as 2006, the old contract ran into difficulties, and I suspect that you'll hear from some of my colleagues around at the time who will detail some of the details of what this all-singing, all-dancing solution to the problem was going to bring to us. It hasn't done so. The reality is that we've seen little or no improvements, and costs continue to spiral, productivity has fallen, and the backlog has increased. Recently, Councillor Kerr in the press suggested that these concerns should have been raised 6 months ago, and that she has a plan to address the problem. In fairness, she may have inherited some of the issues here, and some efforts have been made to address the problem. However, it's not been sorted. She knows that both sides of this chamber, the Planning and Transport Commission and the Audits and Accounts Commission, have called her administration to account on a number of occasions. They voiced their concerns for many, many months now. Since this contract was first awarded in 2007, increasing costs have been identified on a regular basis. And I'm going to summarise a few of these that I've got a note because time's getting on. But at the Audit and Accounts Commission on the 24th of September, we heard of costs exceeded by £500,000. And the reasons that were given were lack of performance, poor control management, staff issues and poor productivity. The answer was new ways of working and introducing of work trials. On the 4th of December, Audit and Accounts again called the administration to account, and the overspend now was £1 million. The reason given again was poor productivity. One of the only answers was that the contractors was given a penalty of £45,000. These problems have gone on, and at the Planning Transport Commission meetings on the 19th of January and in April, both commissions called for updates. This was when we heard about the first action plan from Councillor Kerr, and who said that they were looking for alternative funding. Fortunately for her, they were given some assistance in the budget by this Conservative group, and amendments were made to supply some more money towards that budget. However, their solutions were to tamper with the surface dressing programme, to stop all planned footpath renewals, and to underspend on the contract. They were going to underspend, and they have underspent on the contract, because the contractors were unable to provide value for money, and they didn't want to throw good money after bad, is what they were saying. Despite Councillor Kerr's earlier explanation as prompted by Councillor Harwood, there is clear reference made in the reports around these calling to account that Councillor Carr has known since June 2008 what the cause of the problems were and how they should be fixed. the following measures were proposed. She proposed more client-side resources, more expertise on their side, and more money. And yet here we are today, still with the problems as outlined in the latest Cabinet report last week, detailing the new action plan. This has gone on far too long already. So what is the current situation as explained in the report? And again, I've got some details. I'm going to summarise them a little. But basically, we're now in a deficit of £1.34 million. We need £800,000 a year ongoing just to stand still. And what is that standstill position? The standstill position is this, that we've got thousands more repairs outstanding. Since autumn last year, emergency-only repairs are being done, effectively. The budget was deliberately underspent because the contractors could not deliver. Underspent by £369,000. They intend to reinspect the network, and this is going to take 6 months. Have we all not in our wards seen the yellow markings on the roads and the pavements there long enough just to be worn away, and we're going around again and doing them again? We know where the problems are, let's get on with it. Potholes are being filled to a lesser specification. What does that mean? Does that mean, as we're going to hear examples later on, of people hand-filling a bit of tarmac in and pressing it down with their hand and walking away? That is not good enough. It's creating further problems down the line. We've heard already from Councillor Kerr there have been further staff changes, unsettlement at Carillion. Major roads are going to be tackled first, and minor roads, quote, could take 12 months to get to before any repairs are done to minor roads. The list of these things goes on, and it's all detailed in the report that went to Cabinet last week. It includes the intention to cancel any footpath renewal schemes this year. This is simply not good enough. Mr. Mayor, I suggest that, as proposed, an all-party Special Highways Maintenance Commission can address these issues with joint membership from the Planning and Transport and the Audit and Accounts Commission. This commission needs the terms of reference as outlined in the motion today. Councillor, I'm not going to go into those because they're all there for you to see, and hopefully you've read them all, and that is what's needed to take this situation and get it sorted. Tonight, Councillor Kerr says that this contract is now standing on its feet and hopes it will soon be up and running. Last week at Cabinet, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Kerr said, and I quote, this was when she presented the new action plan to the Cabinet and commending it to the Cabinet, she said, the final words were, we will have to suck it and see if it works. That's clearly not good enough. This is too little too late, and I commend this motion to the Chamber as being essential to put an end to these issues for certain once and for all.
Hey, Councillor Potter. Councillor Holmes, would you like to speak?
I'd like to reserve my right to speak unless anyone else...
Okay.
Is anyone going to speak, or I'll speak now?
Then we'd like... Councillor Dinser.
Has Councillor Potter finished? I mean,
yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Chris. This motion, I totally agree with the points made about the lack of direction, all the long list of things which are the Cabinet notes about what hasn't been done, what could be done more effectively, if we had better leadership in terms of the controlling group, all the things about how the contract could be managed better. Totally agree with all that. But then we have the chair of the Planning and Highways Transport Over and Scrutiny Commission coming here proposing a motion which says that we will have a special Highways Maintenance Over and Scrutiny Commission. Yeah. This is the official opposition, just voted in by some 1 or 2 partisan fans of Liberal Democrats, of efficiency, effective leadership and opposition. And what are they proposing? They're proposing another group to meet, mostly Over and Scrutiny Commission members, with Ordinary Commission 1 or 2 members. this is what this council has chosen as the official opposition, droning on and on and on of things that we've heard in open scrutiny commissions, cabinet debates, which all tells us that the Liberal Democrats managing highways and maintenance their responsibility and leadership has been shambolic, and everybody in every area of the city knows that, and residents complain of it, and we know that the Liberal Democrats, all they say is, oh no, it didn't start in our watch, it was somebody else who started it, we're just doing our best, we're just doing our best. Their best is not good enough. We all know that. You know that. We know that. But this isn't going to do anything with that. This is going to be more bureaucracy. The bureaucracy that the leader of the Conservative official opposition group, Councillor Jennings, just espoused about recently. What was he saying? We're going to keep council tax down to 2 years. Efficiency drives, better services. And the best they can come up with is this motion. Doesn't mean a thing, won't add anything more. Councillor Poulter, if you want to do this, you're the chair of the Planning and Transportation Overview and Scrutiny Commission. Get on with the job, get this done, scrutinise it, get your colleagues on the commission to say, let's have a topic review on this. Mind you, as far as I understand, we've had discussions on this before in the Overview and Scrutiny Commission. Conclusions, just what he read out. I won't say this in it. It concluded that more could be done, more effectively, quicker, better leadership, not just in the council, but in the partnership and alliance. We all know that. This motion is irrelevant, doesn't add anything more, and I urge this chamber to oppose it in its entirety. Thank you very much.
Anybody else wish to speak? And Councillor Williamson.
Well, I absolutely want to endorse everything that Councillor Dinser has said, and Councillor Jennings, the new supreme leader of the official opposition of this council's exiting stage left. Well done. Good night. Good night. Councillor Jennings, I don't know if you can hear me, but is Councillor Poulter really one of your rising stars? Is he really the person who's going to hold this shambolic administration to account? My goodness me, they must be trembling in their boots. It's little wonder, isn't it, that every single Liberal Democrat to a man and woman voted for the Tories to be the official opposition. What a surprise! Listening to Councillor Poulter, he must be absolutely laughing all the way back home tonight, thinking, God, crikey me, great, we've got Councillor Poulter calling us to account. We're really going to be in trouble now. My goodness me, I fell asleep halfway through your contribution. Is Councillor Jennings too frightened to come back in now? I nearly fell asleep. I mean, what was you talking about? Where were you going? It was just pathetic, Councillor Poulter. That's the best you can come up with. Well, really, it really is appalling. We've seen how pathetic the Conservatives are. We saw their back of a fag packet budget earlier this year. They couldn't come up with a proper alternative budget. Oh no, they haven't done anything at all, actually, unlike the Labour group. Here he is, the supreme leader of the opposition. Welcome, sir. That's right, that's very appropriate, yeah. Heil Hitler. Heil Hitler to you too, yeah. Very appropriate. Yes. Anyway, back of a fag packet I was just talking about. I don't know if you've been out for your fag. Back of a fag packet budget that you produced. Utterly pathetic. We went out to consultation. We amended our budget proposal in line with the representations that we had back from local people. That's actually what led us to incorporate into our alternative budget the commitment to save the school buses that the Lib Dems wanted to axe. But on the night, we had this back of a fag packet. Quick, we've had to do something. The Labour group are making us look stupid. They went in there. The Lib Dems, just sort of caved in. There was no debate. There was no real... Councillor Hicks has said, this is what we're going to do. And Councillor Joe said, oh, yes, right, we'll go along with that. Great. So, I don't know whether we're going towards a Lib Dem Tory alliance or what we're going to have at the end of all this. But quite frankly, this is an irrelevant motion, Mr Mayor. What we'll have is a glorified committee to deal with a very real problem. Is that your idea, Councillor Jennings, Supreme Leader of the Opposition, Is that your idea of actually driving Derby forward to set up a committee to talk about it when, if I might refer to the alternative budget, we had proposals contained in the alternative budget, £1.2 million devolved to neighbourhood boards, £500,000 additional going in to the budget to address the backlog that had built up. Real proposals, properly costed, contrary to what Councillor Jennings would have you believe, and in actual fact, our budget, Councillor Jennings, balanced at the end of 3 years, unlike the Lib Dems budget, actually, which is, I think, £600,000, showing a £600,000 deficit at the end of the 3-year period. Mr Mayor, this really is a nonsense motion. You must be embarrassed sitting in the chair being a member of this group that come forward with such a ludicrous proposal.
Councillor Wilson, we can't bring the mayoralty into politics and stuff, so if you can withdraw that statement, thank you.
Let me absolutely, though, concur, because I think Councillor Dinser did actually hit the nail right on the head when he said that, Councillor Poulter, you are the chair of the appropriate Overview and Scrutiny Commission. If you really wanted to do something about this, you could simply call a topic review and get on with it. Don't waste time setting up ridiculous committees. It's just more bureaucracy, more talking for its own sake. And I support Councillor Dinser and urge members to oppose this ridiculous motion.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. I had expected to be called to speak on the previous motion, and I was going to talk about it's nice to have this ping-pong right across the chamber, and I say that now as well, but I think that ping-pong has been quite fun to watch in the middle. And I'm also encouraged by some of the comments from this side, and I'm hoping that Councillor Roberts, as Chair of Audit and Accounts, will take on board the sentiments from his leadership, because it's the oversight of the highways maintenance budget has been a bit split between those two bodies, Audit and Accounts, which Councillor Roberts chairs, and the Highways and Transport Overview and Scrutiny, which Councillor Poulter has chaired. And I think that there has been a slightly uncomfortable relationship between those, which clearly the Tories were going to try and sort out by creating yet another body. And my original notes said, look, come on, 2 meetings was not efficient, but we don't need extra meetings, do we? And I think that if we're going to follow the view that actually it's Planning and Transport Overview and Scrutiny that should be doing this scrutiny, that makes very sound sense, and we don't need to create more bodies to do what we've already got a body to do. So, I thank Labour for their attitude to this particular motion we've got tonight. The other element that did concern me about the way this was put together was the presumption that, despite having reports to Cabinet about what is going on, despite having those reports to other meetings about the process that's been gone through by officers in putting together an action plan and then delivering that through to where we are now, when we hopefully will see that delivered and proven to be right. Now the cake is out there and we're going to start eating it. And I believe that we stand a very good chance to be looking back in 12 months' time and saying, good heavens, we made a big fuss about that last year, didn't we? And that's certainly what I hope that people in this chamber are doing in a year's time. So, thank you, Labour, for looking at this with open minds and not wanting to add to bureaucracy. And let's use the processes that we already have in this council to be able to balance the executive and the backbench.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If we go along with what Councillor Kerr says, then everything will be honky-dory. I'll take you back to December the 11th, 2007. And there was a presentation in this chamber. And it was a new partnership presentation. Derby Roads. And what was it about? It was about introducing a new contractor for delivering our highways maintenance in the city of Derby. You'll have to wait to find out who the Cabinet member was at that time. Now, there were some highways network facts put. Class A plus B plus C roads, 117 kilometres. Unclassified roads, 578 kilometres. Footways and cycleways, 139 kilometres. Winter maintenance routes, 265 kilometres. And then we went on to review the previous contract. And what were we told about? Low quality work, especially routine maintenance. Late delivery of work. A fixed schedule of rates, so no efficiency incentives. Lack of flexibility and trust. No formal performance management regime. Too little input from the council. No single coordination point with the council. Does this sound familiar? This is December the 11th, 2007, and we're still hearing the same story today. But the key elements within this new contract was to deliver an improved service, quality and value for money, robust communication, consultation and engagement with the community. When was the last time you saw them come to your forum or board meeting? Sharing risk appropriately. The only risk that we've shared is the danger of falling down the potholes. Flexible scope of the contract, encouraging efficiencies, performance management included in the contract and linked to payment mechanisms, open book transparency, fair payments reduces the claims culture, improve strategic and operational management. Have Derby Roads done any of this? I was at that presentation. We asked specific questions about maintenance. If there was a pothole 5 yards away from the one that you were repairing, would you repair? Oh, yes. Would you be sealing those temporary repairs that you were doing? We won't be doing temporary repairs. We will be doing proper reinstatements, and they will be sealed properly. We don't want to come along 6 weeks later after it's rained and lifted the tarmac and do the job again. That's what we're here to deliver for you. And Councillor Banwaite was promoting it. The vision that we got, this strategic partnership with a single identity structure and sheer business processes, delivering innovative and sustainable and valued services. Where in this city have we got that on our highways contract? It's been a shambles from start to finish. This motion gives us all, because we all take collective responsibility for it. If it's Councillor Banwaite that introduced it and Councillor Kerr that picks up and run with it, then when we take control next year, we're going to have to deal with it. So let's collectively get together and sort this problem out, and this motion will allow us the opportunity to do that, because we cannot afford any more rhetoric.
Councillor Webb, time's up. Thank you. Councillor Carr. Okay. Councillor Repton.
I was going to speak on this motion, but I think something happened in this chamber that I can't let go without comment to it. I don't take very kindly to anybody doing a Nazi salute in this chamber. And the leader of the Conservatives came in and did a Nazi salute. This is a place for a democratic process and debate. And I would call upon the leader of the Conservatives to apologise and withdraw any association with that salute. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Jennings.
Well, I'm very sad that Councillor Repton doesn't actually know what a Nazi salute is, and it was actually a wave. A Nazi salute is done with the right hand, not the left. And I walked in and, so Councillor Repton, if you took offence at that, then shame on you, but I apologise.
Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to be very brief. It seems to me that we all know what the problem is. There are thousands of potholes all across the city that are in need of repair. So let's not set up a talking shop in response to that. The Conservatives say that they're about saving money, yet they come forward with this proposal to create bureaucracy and cost taxpayers money through officers' time and so on. We have an Audit and Accounts Committee and a Planning and Transport Overview and Scrutiny Commission, and they are the proper places to scrutinise highways. I don't think there's any getting away from the fact that what's needed to resolve this problem is additional resources to clear the backlog and get us back to the position where we need to be. And maybe if the Tories hadn't supported the Lib Dems budget in March, then we may actually have those resources to address the problem. So it's a bit rich to hear the Conservative group complaining when they're not able to take the opportunity when it arises to do something about it. So let's get on. We don't need any further commissions. The Transport and Planning and Transport Commission needs to look at this. We just need to get on with the repairs and get those done without setting up any more bureaucratic committees and meetings.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Holmes and I'll get Councillor Poulter to then sum up and we'll move it to a vote.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's clear that Labour don't want to sort this issue out, even though they appointed the contractor. They're more interested in storming the Council House, petition in hand. You know, Councillor Williamson and Banwaite, Derby's very own Chuckle Brothers. You know. Anyway, with due respect to the Cabinet member, I'm very concerned by Councillor Kerr's attitude and what seems to be a reluctance to take responsibility for a portfolio. No one is saying that the situation is easily solved. But this week, commenting on tonight's council agenda, she said that the problems with Derby Roads Partnership had already been highlighted through the Overview and Scrutiny Committees. Well, that's correct. I mean, I've been a member of both relevant committees. But she also said that they, the Conservatives, should have picked up and run with this 6 months ago. Well, Councillor Kerr knows that along with colleagues, I've repeatedly raised concerns and asked for more information, asked for assurances through the committees. Each time, a report was presented describing a worsening situation, ever-increasing budget requirements. We were told that steps were being taken or action plans were being drafted and would tackle the problems. But in my view, there's also been a reluctance to offer any significant insight into what's happening on the ground and how things are being managed. Many of us have also raised our concerns outside of the committees, directly with Councillor Kerr and directly with officers, as well as dealing with it in this chamber. And we continue to raise concerns on behalf of residents internally within the Council to try and force improvements. But time after time, Councillor Kerr has told us that many of the valid issues raised had either been addressed or were being addressed. We've had potholes repaired, while others close by have been left untouched. We've had potholes being repaired to an unacceptable standard. Repairs that are only lasting days in some cases. We have questionable working practices being carried out by the repair teams. And each time it was argued that it was argued and agreed that mistakes were being made and that it wouldn't happen again. But this has been going on for over 12 months. So I don't accept any suggestion that I or my colleagues should have raised this before, because it's plainly obvious that the Conservative group have led with the front on this issue for some time, in opposition, as we do have to rely on the competence of the administration. Now, earlier this month, we saw the Cabinet adopt the report on routine maintenance works, or the action plan by another name. The report tells us that in just over 12 months, or maybe 18 months, the Derby Road Partnership, that promised so much, in my view, has descended into operation and budgetary chaos. It seems that there's a complete 6-month re-inspection. Is that right? 6-month re-inspection that's going to be carried out to the city's roads? Well, what that means is that the council themselves don't know the true extent of the repairs that are needed and won't know for some time. Councillor Kerr's Cabinet statement in reaction to the action plan was to say that the partnership was limping along, as well as stating the obvious, really, that the Derby contract was not performing as well as others around the country. But she didn't stop there. She also revealed her strategy, as Councillor Poulter has said, was to suck it and see. I mean, that hardly inspires confidence that someone's got a grip of their brief. The report also stated that to address the current backlog, an estimated £1.34 million in additional funding is needed. £800,000 extra is required year on year, and that's just 18 months after the launch of the partnership. So this is a moving target. I was originally told in committee £700,000 was required, which then increased to a possible £1 million, and then it was £1.3 million, and so on. Something has gone terribly wrong, and we need, as councillors, to know the reasons. The answer is not just about throwing the required budget at the problem either. Surely before we continue to commit huge sums in the longer term, it's vital that we ensure that any extra funding, taxpayers' money, is not being squandered by flawed project management or working practices. We need to urgently review these areas. This motion aims to do just that and make recommendations, urgent actions in the interests of the Derby taxpayer. We need to urgently review these areas. We also need to be confident in reporting back to residents of our wards on this issue. And that's why I think this is an important motion. I would urge members to take the opportunity to support what is being put forward here. It's got honourable intentions. It could offer all three political groups a chance to make informed decisions prior to the setting of the 2010-11 budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Good timing. Councillor Poulter, yes, sir, what?
Mr Mayor, thank you very much. Go back to my notes. In danger of boring Councillor Williamson to death, I'm not going to go on in too much detail, but I'm going to offer an apology, if you like. I'll apologise for boring him in respect to what is an extremely important issue for thousands of members of public in Derby, their safety and their conduct around this city. I'll apologise to him if he apologises to us as a council for the political rhetoric he insists in coming out with, the history lessons, the histrionics, and the constant reference to the non-existent budget that he talks about. The point here is, Mr Mayor, that I consider that the problem with this is that this issue crosses the authority of two commissions, the Audit and Accounts Commission and the Planning and Transport Commission. I know that Councillor Roberts has tried to call the people to account on this on a number of occasions, but the fact is this needs a joint approach. It needs an all-party approach towards this. Effectively, it could be a topic for both of us, but it needs a joined-up thinking to come up with the solutions and help Councillor Kerr out. She's always asking for suggestions as to how we can help. If we set this commission up, we would come up with the right solution to sort out this ongoing problem. As it is, it'll have to wait till we come to control by the sounds of it, and we'll sort it out. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, we'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? Put me on. All those against?
For 14 against 17.
Okay, the motion is lost. Okay, that concludes the council meeting. I'm ready for a pint.